Sarah, why is there nobody on the list of attendees?
Because I just turned on the meeting. They should be showing up now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
I don't see Lori Davidson, David
Sarah,
Davidowitz.
I'm here.
Well,
Caesar.
she's here, and we're live now.
He's basked in sunlight.
Okay, I see her. All right. Okay, we're on, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah, do we have all the facts in order?
Yes.
And the board members, you received copies of the minutes from Sarah. Do we have any conversation for the minutes, corrections?
No.
Is that a no?
No.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Somebody second? Second. All in favor? I'll do the roll. Dan,
I agree with the minutes
Kevin,
and the motion.
I'm in favor of the motion.
Mike,
Aye.
George.
And I wasn't there.
Okay, and Caesar says yes. Let me start and introduce the board members that are here tonight. It's Dan McEllicott, Kevin Thurman, Mike Smith, George Boyle. I'm Caesar Manfredi, the chair. Lori Davidowitz is going to be sitting in on two projects, and we'll let the record know when that occurs. And we shall proceed in the order as I read them right now. Number one will be 8 West Sunnyside Lane. Number 2 will be 10 Hancock Place. Number 3 will be 4 Camden Court. Number 4 will be 14 Castle Road. Number 5 will be 26 Willow Street. Number 6 will be 8 Shady Lane. And number 7 will be 2 Ardsley Avenue East. I didn't give the item numbers, but I think everybody knows which ones. I don't want to go through it again. All right, first up, and I'll use the item numbers this time, is 8 West Sunnyside Lane, and that's 2021-11.
If you're here to represent the application, if you please hit the, thank you. Oh. If you can hit the raise hand button, please.
Hello, is anybody here from Sunnyside?
Yes. Hi there. Hi, everybody. It's Michael Haddad here. I'm the homeowner at 8 West Sunnyside Lane.
Okay, you have your professional available? It was,
I do not. My architect, unfortunately, was not able to join this evening. So I'm playing a little bit from behind, but I understand the submission was made earlier today. It was my understanding that you all would have that in front of you.
well,
Mike, I did receive it from your architect. I let him know that it's too late to submit anything new to the board. But I did get it, and I did get the wetland permit application, and it looked okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I think the comments that we received that the architect responded to were only received today, which explains some of the timing. But if you all remember, or those who were present at the last meeting, what we're proposing to do here is add a covered porch to an existing stone and concrete patio alongside the house. This is something that was part of the original design of the house, included in the prior package. I think it was on slide or page 7, actually showed the initial drawings. So what we're proposing to do here is add a roof and a screened in porch to cover that existing flagstone and concrete patio. This is a structure that's going to be opposite the house from where the aqueduct is. So the house is actually in between the aqueduct and the screened in porch. That was one of the concerns raised at the last meeting. Another concern that was raised was just ensuring that we protect the trees that are in close proximity to the construction site, which we have included ways that we were going to accomplish that in the new pack. And that's obviously very important to us as homeowners. That's one of the reasons we bought the house, for the property and its trees. So any trees that are nearby, and there aren't many, will be protected. And then finally, as Dan mentioned, the issue that we are close to Sunny Brook, which is opposite the house on West Sunnyside Lane. We are within 100 feet of the 100-year floodplain. And so it's my understanding that the wetland submission that was sent to Dan in the building department was okay. It sounds like that's the case from Dan's comments earlier.
Well, there was a checklist of administrative type things. I'll just run through it and make sure we have the information in hand from the engineer and our building inspector. You were to notify the state park about being, I know it has nothing to do with the aqueduct, but it is adjacent to your property, and we had asked that you notify the state park, the aqueduct people at the state park. I don't know if that was done.
I mean, there's a gentleman who I've gotten to know who manages the aqueduct that I emailed. You know, there's no response from him, or I don't think the architect reached out to anybody else. I mean, they've got a lot on their plate with a 20-mile park.
What's the name?
I'd have to locate it, but I could find that if
Okay,
you will.
and then you were supposed to address, I mean, all these things were just to be addressed. I don't think there were going to be a problem other than the
Yeah.
fact they needed to be addressed. The view
Oh,
preservation,
Stephen Oakes is his name. He's
well, that's the right guy.
yeah.
Okay. View preservation was supposed to be addressed in some way. That, yeah, it's fine. There's not going to be a view obstruction.
No.
Doug, do we have that?
Yeah, everything was addressed.
In there.
Okay. The silt fence, that was addressed. They're going to put silt protection in since the stream is right across the street.
Yep, that's on the plan there, Dan. It's on page 1. Where they
Okay.
detail that.
Yes, Caesar, they did address those comments.
And is any new lighting has to be dark sky compliant?
Nope. No. And sorry, I keep calling you Dan. Apologies for that. But there's no proposed outdoor lighting, if
Okay.
that's the concern, Caesar.
Okay. And you did the wetland permit, right, Doug?
Yeah, they submitted it and it looked okay. We'll,
Okay. All right. Any comment from the board? Dan,
I have none, Caesar.
Kevin,
No, thank you.
Mike,
No comments.
George?
Guess not, no.
And I have no comment. That's Caesar, no comment. Sarah, you have anybody from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand, and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, do we have a resolution of approval for this project?
Whereas in March 2021, Diana Haddad, the applicant, applied for site development plan approval to demolish an existing patio and construct an unenclosed porch on her house at 8 West Sunnyside Lane, which is in the View Preservation District, abuts the old Croton Aqueduct and is within 100 feet of Sunnyside Brook, thereby requiring a freshwater wetlands permit. And whereas none of the work involved in the application will be on the side of the house adjacent to the old Croton Aqueduct, whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated March 1st, 2021, listed a number of issues, most of which were satisfactorily addressed in a subsequent submission. Suzanne Nolan reviewed the plans and made several comments, most of which were adequately addressed. And the planning board held a public hearing on the application on March 3rd and April 7th. The proposed construction will not have adverse impacts on views of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. And whereas the applicant submitted an application for a freshwater wetlands permit on April 5th, which was reviewed by Han, who advised the planning board the proposed activity would not have any impacts on the wetland or its wetland functions. And whereas the action is type 2 action under SECR and therefore requires no environmental review, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Proposed Unenclosed Porch at 8 West Sunnyside Lane. The sheets are specified and prepared by Haynes Architecture, subject to complying with the items listed in the Han memorandum dated April 7th.
Okay, we have a motion to approve that resolution.
Motion to approve resolution, and I guess goes before
Do
everyone.
we have a second?
Second.
Okay, let me take the roll call for a vote. Dan, how do you vote on this?
I approve of it, and I designate Sarah to sign for me.
Kevin?
I approve and authorize Sarah to vote on my behalf or to sign on my behalf.
Mike?
I approve and I authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
George?
Approve and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
Caesar approves and authorize Sarah to sign. Okay, thank you very much. You did a good job in pinch hitting for your architect.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time.
He
Yeah,
probably
wait.
still- he probably still send you a fee.
Can't wait to see it. It'll look good from the West Sunnyside.
Yeah, no, it certainly will. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
All right, the number 2 on the hit parade tonight is 2021-08, 10 Hancock Place. I was gonna come up with a reference to baseball, like citing the lineup and pinch hitting and with the new baseball season, but I decided not to do that. We have somebody from.
Good evening.
Here we go.
How you doing?
Good. You've been here before and we got several things straightened out. I know you did a good job with on the initial problem of coverage. You cut it down. You put up a nice chart. You showed what the neighborhood looked like. And I think there's just a few things rather than go through the whole thing. One of the things I think you took care of, because the tree person for us has no comment. And there was a concern about existing trees, because when you plant trees too close to existing trees, you kill the roots of the existing trees. And I think that's been taken care of. The pool fence was an issue. So why don't we do that first? I think the fence parallel to the aqueduct, we passed on. It was the other fences, north and south, to complete the loop around the pool. So why don't you go into that?
Sure. So we did discuss, would you like me to share screen or just?
It's a good idea to put it up on the screen.
All right, let me share that portion of it. So, and I'll zoom in here for 2 seconds.
Yeah, you were going to use the extreme south fence, and that didn't meet code. You were going to move the fence closer to the pool, and that's what we didn't know what it was going to look like.
Well, what we had proposed was there was an existing chain link fence along the southern border and along the Croton Aqueduct that subsequently wasn't tall enough or didn't meet pool code. So what we were proposing on that fence was to replace it in kind, 1 foot taller, green, with plantings behind it, so it went away. Everyone seemed fairly happy with that at the last meeting. Subsequently, we just didn't provide enough detail on the interior fence, which is the fence in the middle of our yard, or the proposed fence in the middle of the yard, and also how we would alter an existing wood fence that no longer met pool code. So Ed sent us the details related to pool code, and we presented alterations for those fence, and I'll pull up the details for those. So
does it meet code now?
It will once we do this. So here is once this is the proposal. So the problem with the fence as is today is this meeting rail in the middle of the fence. It provides a step of sorts over top. So what we've proposed is to replace that in kind with a solid cedar painted fence, which meets code because it's not climbable anymore. So it would still match the same location. We would just infill it and get rid of this middle rail. That's this detail here. The detail for the chain link fence is replace in kind, just taller. And then for the interior fence, there's existing fence for some of the railings in the backyard, that's essentially a wrought iron with a little bit of detailing. We're mimicking that fence for the pool so that it matches the house. Most of this won't be seen from the public way, but is what we're proposing for the pool. It meets all the pool guidelines that you need, but graphically it's matching the house. So that's what we've proposed fence-wise at this time.
Ed, you okay with the code and the fence that they showed us?
By my volume. Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. The other was pool drainage. Where's the pool drainage go if you have to drain the pool?
Well, we have two options. We noted one that we could connect back into our dry well system, which we haven't done yet at this time. It wasn't in the plan. We didn't coordinate it with Hudson. We could also potentially just pump it out if needed. We don't have a pool contractor in place yet, so we haven't finalized all of the minutia for some of the minor equipment, accoutrements, and other things. So that's still a little bit up in the air.
Ed, that can be dealt with in the engineering phase, the final approvals building.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to ask us or present?
No, I think we read the comments that came back this morning, and the only thing that was new, besides talking about the fence in more detail, was the proposed pool drainage. And there were no additional comments that came back, so we're, hopefully ready to gain some sort of approval, I hope.
Okay, let me poll the board. Dan, any comment on this project?
Everything appears to be in line. The fencing and the plantings seem to be okay with me. And the location.
Kevin?
No questions or comments, thanks.
Mike?
No questions or comments.
George?
So was this here being presented last month as well?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And also,
Because-
and also the previous month, George.
Right, I do remember it being, seeing this before and commenting about the issue about how to deal with the aqueduct, and that it isn't just making a line of soldiers of trees, but to somehow kind of morph the actual property line, because we've done that on a previous application as well. And the concern is that, at least, and it was addressed at that time 2 months ago, was that the aqueduct is actually, in essence, in a way, a street and its frontage. And by doing this, by leaving the fence as it is and creating just a line of trees on your side, doesn't necessarily create the enhance, I should say, the naturalness of the aqueduct itself. It does create a very strong line, and it does nothing for the edge. And as there are other properties, so the idea was that anytime a new applicant came here, that they would in essence start trying to make it so that you could blur the distinction between what is on the aqueduct and what is on their property, as opposed to what's happening directly next door. Because otherwise this is just going to turn into a walled-in area. So that was, I know I brought that up 2 months ago, or whenever it was. That's why I was asking if that was brought up again last month, because it looks like it hasn't been addressed at all.
Now, George, that's one of the reasons we left the chain link instead of the neighbor's white plastic fence, because that would have putting a different fence in other than chain link with some shrubs behind the chain link to hide the chain link and hopefully to, as you said, stagger the plantings. Susan Nolan, our landscape person, and on this part has no recommendations. So she was fairly satisfied with the planting. So I hope that the expectation is it would do what you desire, because Susan looked at it carefully.
Okay. I just will go back to the previous one that was done just a block or two away.
That's the neighbor.
Yeah, that was a little bit more significantly blurring of the two, but I'll leave it at that.
Actually, George, on that one, the two Hancock, I thought it was overly planted and was creating what you didn't want. But it went through and, anyway, we'll see how it works. Planting is better than a white plastic fence. Just something about those fences that don't sit well with me.
Yeah, not to speak out of turn, but I kind of think the lightest impact is to keep it as it is and to keep it fairly green, which I think we're doing that with skip laurels that are very natural. And I do think it works the best in giving the means of year-round screening, which is required, as well as blurring the vision between the two. I actually think, and I'm bringing up these pictures just to kind of show, like, essentially when it is in full bloom, we don't have a lot of windows into the property to begin with. So the kind of line of skip laurels that we're presenting here is actually more varied than you see. The existing line is a little bit blurry. It doesn't catch all the bushes and shrubbery that already exists. But we don't want to get to a point that when it is winter and people are still enjoying the aqueduct where you can see in and see pool covers and such. And, we think this is the best way to blur it and keep everybody happy, I hope. So.
Okay, getting back to the fence, it's really not in kind because you're replacing it with a taller fence. So it's work in the aqueduct. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, and Ed, it still has to go to the ZBA for work in the buffer.
Yes. He has to go to the ZBA
Coverage.
because it exceeds coverage, so.
And the coverage and the fence.
Right,
Correct.
that's in the resolution.
Okay, do we have a resolution? Oh,
Yeah.
what-
Yeah.
you want to- oh, hey, I didn't, wait. We didn't go to the public yet.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have anything in the public?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, Mary Ann, you're on with the resolution.
Hey, just by the way, Mr. Kraft, the aqueduct is E. I remember on your last day, it's AQUE.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't catch
Aqueduct is
that.
spelled AQUE duct.
Oh, did I spell it wrong?
And on your last application too, it kind of sticks out.
I even fixed the last page of the application and I screwed up.
So for your future applications on the aqueduct.
Sorry.
That would spell Aquaman. This is
Is it part of the resolution that I fixed that?
No, it's not. It's not even in Hans comments, but.
I'll be honest. I think that's my surveyor's text. I need to correct it on the original.
Yeah. Whereas in February 2021, Richard Pasco applied for site development plan approval to construct a pool, walks, patios, and storm water management system at their property at 10 Hancock Place, which is located in the View Preservation District and adjacent to the Old Croton Aqueduct. And whereas the proposed construction would exceed the permitted coverage and therefore requires a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And whereas the proposed fence and landscaping are located within the Croton Aqueduct buffer and therefore require a variance under 224-51 point C from the ZBA. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated February 1st and March 1st, 2021 listed a number of issues, most of which were satisfactorily addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on February 3rd, March 3rd, and April 7th, 2021. And whereas at the February 3rd meeting, the planning board stated that the coverage variance being sought is very large and that it would like to see a study showing the coverage on neighboring properties. And whereas the applicant submitted the requested study and also reduced the proposed coverage from 4,431 square feet to 4,227 square feet. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made a number of comments in the February and March 1st, 2021 reports, all of which were addressed to her satisfaction. And whereas the proposed construction would not impact views of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. And whereas the type 2 action under SECR and therefore requires no environmental review. Now Therefore, be it resolved that the planning board grants site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled RPH Pasco Residence, and the sheets are enumerated, prepared by Studio Park, subject to one, receiving variances from the ZBA for coverage and activity in the aqueduct buffer, and two, complying with the Han memorandum dated April 5th, 2021.
We have a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second,
Dan, how do you vote?
I approve of the resolution
And authorize.
and designate Sarah to sign from, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Kevin,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Mike,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
George,
I'm not going, I'm against this, so no signing.
okay, and you're against it because,
Again, I do believe that this is going to basically show, there's another one that's further down on the aqueduct where you're going to see just this row of hedges that will not be like what is being described by the applicant.
okay, so noted. I vote yes, and I guess it's carried. 4-1. Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
That's number 2. Number 3 is 2021-14 for Camden Court.
Hello, John Milan, Ferguson Milan Architecture, representing the Solomons. This is a project to replace a deck and modify some rear yard items that needed to be legalized. I think we've addressed most of the comments from last month. I see we have one comment about protecting roots as part of the relocation of the fence that's off the property line on the rear yard. So we can address that. Caesar, is there anything else you want to discuss or look at on this one?
Well, yeah, we realize that what you're trying to legalize shouldn't be there. It's in the watershed, and there was supposed to be an engineering justification to justify the fire pit in the watershed. And as far as I'm concerned, the desktop letter survey that was performed just doesn't do it. And if the applicant desires to keep the fire pit and not remove it, there need to be further environmental study as to why it should be there.
Okay, I mean, I think, is your concern, Caesar, simply the fire pit piece of it?
Correct.
Okay, and to be clear, you know, none of this, the owner that we're working for is a new owner of the house.
We understand that.
Yeah. So there was no, you know, they were not aware of any of this work being done without a permit, or whether it was requiring a permit or watershed review. So would you like, we could have Beth Evans, I suppose we could have Beth Evans focus more specifically on that use and confirm that there isn't any danger from that use affecting the watershed. I mean, I think she was aware of that use when we gave her the drawings. I don't think it's addressed specifically in her letter, but I think the distances are so great that she believed that, you know, there couldn't be any impact on the watershed from any activity in that area.
No, we're concerned that it's a start of a slippery slope with the watershed. You know, give an inch, take a yard, and it is an activity. It is a fire pit that generates a human activity, and You're either gonna have to do a lot more work on just specific justification or just take it out.
But I mean, there is recreational activity is allowed in that area, right? According to the watershed law.
Well, we'll let Mary Ann address that.
Yeah, it referred to as passive recreation.
Yeah, passive, and that, the concern is that a fire pit wouldn't be passive recreation. Passive recreation are like hiking trails and stuff, not a place where you could have, parties and gatherings and stuff. So
Okay.
Guess it hinges on your definition of passive.
Right. So we can go back to Beth, I guess, and indicate, like, because there's a limit to how, I don't think the owner really uses it in the way it's attended right now, or they certainly haven't since they moved there.
Why don't they clam it up?
Uh,
Make it a flower bed.
yeah, that would be totally reasonable, and we could agree to that tonight, I'm sure, because I know that this was not a high.
Ed, Mary Ann, if that turned into a flower pot.
Yeah, I mean, we're not prepared to do anything on it anyway tonight.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true.
So
You're gonna have to come back.
our concerns are to document it well so it doesn't creep into a bigger problem. So the fire pit and that little bit of walkway that you left would be appropriate to remove. And we still need a little bit more information from Beth Evans on the passive use of the land and why it wouldn't be a disturbance.
So just to be clear, then, I think it's really about the use of gathering around the fire pit and the potential impact of that, and have her consider a potentially large gathering around the fire pit, 10 or 12 people, and let us know if that would have any impact on wetlands.
Yeah, John, this would be the first application that the planning board approved any activity in the watershed area.
Right.
So it's a little bit more than just a fire pit and a little walkway and a wall and a swing set. The swing set, it's not on an improved surface, it's on wood chips. That could be seen as passive. Retaining wall, I think there's a consideration given since it was there already. In 2 houses over to the north, they made them remove the retaining wall because they couldn't prove that because of the fill that was involved. Here it looks more like a cut, more than a cut than a fill.
Right.
So I mean, you have to address those issues as give them a substantial reason for the passive activity and the wall to remain is important from Beth Evans' report.
Okay.
Right?
Or not have it there.
Well, I think John's on the right track.
Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, I think I'll start with Beth Evans, and if she tells us there's a reason that it can be that, we'll
Give me a call before you go down that route.
Okay. All right.
And there was one other issue. I had a little note here. Doug and Ed, it was supposed to be clarifying coverage. That was okay.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay, John, you got your job to do.
Yep.
Let me ask the board about any opinions on this thing. Dan?
Yeah, I would say the fire the fire pit would be the issue, I guess, and obviously if it's removed or whatever, it would seem to pass our rules, I guess, assuming that, again, passive recreation and that type of thing, and watershed rules.
Kevin?
I don't have anything to add to what was already said. I look forward to hearing what Beth Evans would have to say, a little bit more detail about each of the features that we mentioned and what impact they might have specifically.
Mike?
I thought that there was an issue with relocating the rear fence.
Yeah, I think John said that right in the beginning. Relocation of the fence, Suzanne indicated the fence was going to go through or too near a tree. And John, you said you were going to fix that?
Yeah, I think we can just make a note that, the posts have to be hand dug and, you just don't want the post right at the base of the tree and limit the root impact, cut the roots.
We think the same, but the arborist, our landscape was also concerned with the part in between the posts being at least 2 feet away from the tree.
Right. Yeah. Right. So the tree doesn't grow into it, I think,
Right.
is what she probably means. Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
Okay, so it's more than just the posts. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Mike,
Yes.
George?
Yeah, I just think that if we're going to be relying on this memo from Beth Evans, the big thing here is precedent. So we don't want this to become sort of de facto okay. So there has to be a real reason why specifically on this site that can stay.
Yeah. Gotta be some meat and potatoes in here. Okay. Okay, George?
Yep.
Sarah, anything from the public?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you, John.
Thank you. Sarah, I'm gonna, I don't know if you can demote me, actually. That would be best, I think, and rather than leave the meeting. That's okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll, can
Yeah,
you
just,
stop sharing your screen for a sec?
yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Put you back
Is there
as an
a better-
attendee.
Is there a better use of word than demote?
No, that's Zoom's word. Yeah,
No.
she's demoting me.
We're gonna change you back to an attendee.
Right.
Okay, moving right along to number 4. We're on 2021-12, 14 Castle Road.
Good evening. My name is Troy Wojciechowski, engineer for the applicant, Barry Honig. The project before you tonight is for a proposed pool and patio. Last month, we made our first submission to the board for review. And probably the overarching theme was reduce your coverage. The project requires a variance, and last month the board wasn't crazy about the extent of the variance. So we went back and kind of revisited our layout and made some adjustments to it. So if I can share my screen, I'll pull that up for us here.
And you were to provide a comparison to the neighborhood and see how it fit in.
Correct, right, we did that as well.
And it wasn't that clear to me, but go ahead.
Okay. So here is our plan. The previous plan had a larger pool. It was 4 foot wider and 5 feet longer. It also had a patio on all 4 sides. There was a patio on this end here, narrow patios on both long ends, and then a 5 foot patio here. So we've removed the patios on the 3 sides here and left just a modest 5 foot wide patio in this location. So as far as the numbers go, the allowable coverage in this zone is 14%. The existing coverage is 13.7, so they're almost at it now. Our previous plan proposed a 21.7% coverage, which was 55% over the allowable. Our current plan with the reductions in the patio and the pool has brought it down to a 17.6% coverage, which reduces the percent over from 55% to 26%.
Let's be clear on this. The
Sure.
current property meets all coverage standards.
Correct.
So this new project will bring it, did you say 26% over the allowable, and the property is currently at allowable?
Correct.
So you want 26% of new coverage.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So we prepared the analysis comparing,
Excuse me, 20% of new coverage that's over the allowable.
I have 23.4 over allowable and 26.1 over existing.
Oh, all right.
Right.
Yes, okay, 23 over allowable. I had that too. Oh, that's where the 26 came. 26 over existing. Okay,
okay. So we prepared an analysis of the neighborhood to compare coverage percentages of the neighbors. And in summary, so that was this packet here. So this is the applicant's lot in yellow. And so we analyzed all of the lots surrounding the applicant's lot. And you can see from the summary here, the 17.6% that we're proposing basically falls right in line with the neighborhood.
I don't want to mix apples and oranges. I don't know what those numbers mean. I know your existing is, your property is 23% over allowable. You got to tell us what the other properties are over allowable so we can compare the over allowable of the other properties compared to what you want to do. I'm not sure what those numbers mean. You say 14 Castle is 17.6%. What happened to the 23% over allowable? I don't get it.
In this zone, all of these lots have a maximum allowable coverage of 14%. So according to this analysis, only lots.
Excuse me.
Sure.
I have the impression you're mixing apples and oranges. We already decided that 14 Castle is below the allowable. Are all the other lots below allowable?
No, all the other lots are above allowable.
How much above allowable? And not those numbers.
For example, lots, well, let's see. Let's take the neighbor. Lot 5 is at 19%. So if I do the quick math, divided by 14. So the next door neighbor is 35 or 36% over the allowable. Okay, which makes sense because we're at 17.6% and we're about 23% over the allowable. So you would basically.
How'd you get that number?
This for lot 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I divided 19% by the 14% that's allowable in the zone. So if you take 19 divided by 14%, that gives you 1.36. So it's 36% over the allowable. So of course, if you do lot 6, which is also on that cul-de-sac there, if you divide 24% coverage divided by the allowable 14, that one's actually 71% over the allowable.
Doug, are you getting this?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to check that because if you use that same equation for yours, it comes to 25.7 and you know.
Right, and that's why I had 26% over allowable. I rounded it in my letter.
Yeah, I think we need to see the whole numbers just to check those.
Yeah,
So-
we got to use.
Maybe
consistent-
close, but
I mean, you're using different numbers. We're dwelling on 23% over allowable. And you need to tell us the percentage of the neighborhood that's over allowable in the same format. Not some calculated different way of doing it.
I could send them an example of one that
Well, the one that was very good was the one we just did at Hancock. The chart the gentleman presented for the overage was, I thought, was well presented.
I'll send it over.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused why that makes more,
Well, I understand.
why that offers more clarity compared to how much each flat is over.
The way
Because
we're used to
there's a need
looking at it.
There's a need for the chairman to understand it, and I don't understand what you did. I understand 23% over allowable, and I don't understand these numbers. I want to see apples and apples, not apples and oranges.
Okay, I mean, this is what we did for the BOF application. The allowable coverage is 14% in this zone, and this compares all of the lots, what their percentage coverage is. So lot 1 is 1% over the allowable 14%. Lot 2 is 3% over the allowable 14%. Lot 3 seems to be in compliance and not over. Lot 4 is 3% over the allowable 14%. I guess I'm confused why that's confusing.
That's total lot coverage versus the percentage over the value that's allowable.
Right. Well, I guess,
Yeah, if you look at our comment number 1, just look at it that way. So you're going from proposed is 4259 over 3453, and there's your percentage over.
well, what I could do for the board, if the board is willing to do this, I can convert all of these to the percentage over in about 5 minutes. If you
Well,
want to skip to another application,
No,
come back to this.
well, you're going to have to come back anyway because there's a lot of critical information that.
Well,
needs
there
to be-
is, but we also, we still have to go to the zoning board, so we're hoping to get the
No, you're not.
boards.
You got a lot of material here that needs to be addressed before we give an okay to this thing.
Okay, as far as Doug's letter goes, almost all of his comments were related to the final design of the storm system, which we're not going to spend the money and do the soil testing to analyze those. So those are outstanding from the first comment letter, which is fine. Maybe while I have the board here, let's review some of the other information, particularly the photos of the neighbors.
You don't have a cross-section of the elevations, and the profile you provided is less than desirable to present what's being looked at here. You got rock situations that may obviate the need or the ability for the storm system to work. You have rock that may change the location of the pool or elevate the pool, and you have a retaining wall. You have insufficient screening according to our arborist. They're too short for the people that live on Pallister.
I guess what more would you want to see besides this profile, which shows a section
Well,
of
according
the
to that
whole
profile,
backyard?
your retaining wall is sitting in fill. And I'm sure your engineer is not going to put a retaining wall in fill. And judging from when you're looking at the other site plan, the stormwater system is slightly downslope from the retaining wall, which
Right.
would put it in the middle of the fill. And you can't put a discharge system in the middle of fill. You have to put it into original soil, and the original soil has to be 2 feet above rock, which is not clear here. So I don't think the drainage system is in serious question as to whether it will work, because it's not really designed here. We don't know that it worked because you didn't design it.
Right.
I would be hesitant to approve something that's just not going to work.
I guess at this point, we're not looking for an approval because we know we have to come back to your board.
When you're looking for a resolution, and I'm not about to say yes on a resolution with so many questions.
So I guess the question is then I need to speak to my client about doing test pits in this backyard now to find the rock elevation is what I'm hearing.
Well, the drainage is a serious issue, and the location of the pool and the size of the retaining wall at the downhill side of the pool. Allowing just for me to speak is not fair. I'll ask the board to look at this. Dan?
I agree with you, Caesar, in reference to the location of the pool, retaining wall. The drainage issue is pretty big, and obviously the rock issue as well. So, it's certainly everything you just mentioned that I'm concerned with as well.
And what about the coverage?
Again, it's not apples, you know, the comparison seems a little convoluted. So again, that really has to be sorted out and presented in a more coherent fashion to, you know, allow us to make a better decision.
If you did a cross section, Ed, help me with the description of what we need. Cross section showing the elevations and where everything is, not this profile. Which,
So what we're looking
by the
for,
way,
Caesar, what you were
the
looking for.
horizontal and the vertical are different scales. But anyway, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, what you're looking for is you're looking for a cross section to scale of the backyard. So not a squished in, to show exactly where the Coltex will go, exactly where the wall go, from the building to the shed, for lack of a better word, the turret, to scale. So you can actually physically see how the footings are going to work, how the pool's going to work, and what impacts may or may not be there. At the same time, mark the tree to the east, so that the trees to the east. Yeah.
There's a 42-inch oak tree.
Right. So mark that tree just in the cross sections to scale, so we can see how that is impacted with the proposed excavation and filling.
Yeah, there's a 42-inch oak tree that appears to be getting fill over its roots by 2 feet, which is going to kill the tree. So you need to look at that. Kevin?
I mean, a lot of these are engineering questions that are, you know, they sound all very reasonable and just, you know, so the applicant can understand. I mean, we're just trying to establish details about what it is that's being proposed. And I think we talked about it during the last meeting, the challenge of there, you know, I'm definitely sympathetic to the applicant that they may not want to invest a lot in a lot of the exploratory type of these investigations, you know, whether it's test pits and borings and things. But unfortunately, that's really the only way that you're going to be able to provide, it seems, sufficient detail to the board that's going to be able to give some sort of, you know, thought to what's being proposed here. It's just kind of the conundrum. But I support all of the questions that have been posed so far and the issues that have been identified.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the Suzanne's report, and the 2 feet of fill, or a couple of feet, we're not sure. At the toe of the fill is the slope. That's, according to this, just the diagram, it appears the slope is quite significant. And will it hold, or just wash down the hill? Anyway, move on to Mike. Mike?
So I agree. I think that the soil testing and the borings is an absolute necessity for certainly me to decide whether this project could go forward. And secondly, on the coverage issue, I do recommend to you the comparison that was done at 10 Hancock. It also dealt with the desire to build a pool. I cannot tell from your lot numbers how those lot numbers relate to the photographs you provided. I don't believe that the photographs are identified by the lot number. So if I look at lot number 1 and it says a percentage number, I can't see a photograph of what that is. While I was able to see what was on all of the comparable parcels in the 10 Hancock comparison.
Okay, George?
Yeah, I just think that on this, there's some real site issues that are not even engineering issues. And it really has to do with, once the engineer does actual sections that are to scale, both longitudinally and both north, south, east, and west on this, you'll better comprehend the kind of impacts that they're doing to this existing slope. And I really do think that they should look in terms of trying to reduce the amount of fill that they're trying to do. And also, again, these are 6 foot plus high retaining walls that then are going to have a pool fence on top of that. So the neighbors are going to be looking at something that's well over, you know, almost 10 feet high. And I think that, at least one should be recognizing that. I know that there was a letter that was sent by one of the neighbors, and I'm not sure, do we know which neighbor that was? And if you could go to the
Yeah.
site plan to show
Sorry, I
that.
didn't mention that, George. It's
We have two residents that want to speak when you guys are done.
Okay, great. But I just worry about, several things. One is overall the impact to this site by doing this pool this way. And two is the impact it has on the neighbors, because they're going to be looking at some very large walls through this. And there are ways to mitigate that that are not being done here.
George, just so you know, we did ask for photos from the neighboring properties showing the what's existing and then what's improved, the improvements also.
George, the neighbors downhill on Pallister that looked up commented last time on just what you said.
Okay, good.
Looking at the wall and the fence. And Suzanne had a comment that the proposed screening is way too short to alleviate at least a visual concern that those neighbors may have had. Okay. I think it's time to open it up to public comment. Sarah? Oh, excuse me. I forgot to mention there was a letter from number 12 Castle, Peter Civigilia. And just make a note that that neighbor at 12 Castle had no problem with the situation. However, the people that did have a problem were on Pallister looking up.
Could the applicant put the site plan on so I could see where 12 is?
If you're on the circle, it's just to the left. Or I lost
Yeah,
track.
it's on this side here. So the house with the most direct view into the backyard.
Slightly uphill from.
Right, the house is kind of up here, looking down.
Okay, George, can we go to the public? Are you okay?
Yeah,
with
please, thanks. Yeah, sure.
Sarah, you got public out there?
Yes, the first person that's raising their hand is Stephen Hardy. I'm going to talk.
Hello, Stephen, are you there?
Sorry, didn't unmute. Thank you. I'm Stephen Hardy, 2 Palliser, directly below the property, and I'm joined by Dr. Dan Mianalto. And Sarah, I'm not sure if it's possible to have both of us available to comment, but he would like to.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear what your address number was.
Number 2 Palliser.
Okay, thank you.
Which
And
is
you're immediately downhill geographically?
Yeah, it's Hardy there, so it would be our name's to the northwest. There.
Okay. Go ahead.
And Dan is Karsten there on the map, and he's to the, what would that be, southwest, right? And we were also joined previously by Lawrence Levin, who's at 4 Palliser. So I'll try to be quick. First, I want to thank you and appreciate your thoughtfulness and the discussion you just had anticipated some of the comments we were hoping to make. We are all adjacent and downhill from that property. Now, I'm not an expert in planning board process or what's required, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on 2 points. And for credentials such as they are, I ran a company called National Flood Insurance Services that dealt with NFIP flood insurance policies. So, I had experience with Hurricane Sandy and river flooding and so on and so forth. So I'm not an expert, but over time, I think we handled almost 1 million claims for flooding. As a result, I just wanted to focus on the potential movement and damage from water if there's more hardscape above us. Our own patio directly below collects 1 or 2 inches of water in a hard rain as it is. And some of that water floods into our basement to the extent we had to build that rock that begins up at the top, runs right down through our basement. And that's characteristic of many of the homes in this area. So if water hits our patio, it's going to find its way right down to the basement. So we had to build a little dam there to keep it from going into our family room. I think, the question of whether additional hardscape above us is advisable. It should be influenced by that, not on the technicalities alone. But you know, that house and our house are all built on the bedrock that's characteristic of the neighborhood. I did bring 2 photos. If it would help you, I'd be happy to share my screen. It's up to you. And they're photos
That's a
taken
good
from
idea.
our house. Pardon me?
Since that's a main concern of the board here, that would be a good idea if you could manage to share that, what it looks like from your backyard looking.
Sure, I will. Not sure how to share it here.
Hi, Stephen, I'm gonna promote you to a panelist just so you can show your screen, and when you're
Okay.
sharing, I'll change you back to an attendee.
Thank you. I don't see a share screen.
You did it. We got it.
Gotcha. So these are 2 photos taken from our bedroom, which is the 2nd floor of our home, looking up at the property that we're talking about. So you can see there the stone masonry wall and the step downs that have been in the plans. There's the house. And it's very difficult to see in this photo how steep that grade is there, but it's all pretty much bedrock, you know, running right down to our patio. And for perspective, you can see in the right-hand photo, the top of the grill there that's on our patio. And it's pretty much a straight shot of rock coming right down. There are as the engineer noted, there are weep holes in that masonry wall up there, which in his opinion, you know, the wall itself was mainly blocking water from coming down, but we've seen water coming down through those weep holes. In other words, it's a very steep grade and has, you know, as you can see, there's very little soil on the grade in our backyard. So the water just, you know, has nowhere else to go there. That's where it goes. So I'm happy to put the screen back to where it was if you like.
Okay, Sarah, you got any other pictures before we knock you off as a panelist?
No, just those 2, but
But there's
also,
only one on.
I'm sorry.
There's only one picture.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm seeing 2. So are you seeing a second picture now?
No,
No, the same one.
All right, hold on.
try to scroll it.
Yeah. Are you seeing a second one now?
No,
You could see our downspout there.
no. All you see is their
Oh.
house. It's definitely the first
Try
picture.
to stop
Unshared.
sharing the screen and try to click on the other picture and then
Yeah,
restart
okay.
sharing the screen.
Uh, See a different one now?
Okay,
There.
we got the second one.
Yeah, so this is now the shot from our bedroom. You see the downspout from our roof there, and below is the grill on our patio. Again, just rock coming down. And to the point made earlier, there's the masonry wall that you were having a discussion about how much of the yard you would see from our yard. And, you know, I think that's about a 3.5, 4 foot wall. And we were just talking about a 10-foot wall to retain the pool.
Yeah, Sarah, the applicant can hear us, right? I mean, he didn't get cut off.
I can hear.
Okay.
I think the concern is when you see the neighbor sees the top of that wall, how much higher is your, as George was pointing out, you know, you're going to be coming up, I think he said 10 feet between the retaining wall and the pool fence. You're going to be coming up 10 feet. How much higher is that going to be than this wall that the neighbor currently sees? I think you should demonstrate that in the next.
Yeah, we can show that, but it's a little deceiving because the on the applicant side of the wall, it's probably to the ground is, I don't know, 3.5 feet. So it's kind of like a castle wall. It's not, you know, it's not like a retaining wall that is flush soil on the top side. And with the photos that I showed at my eye level was about 5 feet above the surface of the pool. So it's not going to be, 10 foot on top of that wall that you're seeing there.
I think it
Um,
was, but I'd like to see how much it would be.
Yeah, and then we can show that. Sure.
And then as Suzanne's notes indicate, if you've seen them attached to Doug Hahn's comments, the cherry laurel shown is a little short.
Yeah, we can beef those up for sure.
Okay, Sarah, thank you
Thank
very
you all.
much.
I'll
Photos,
stop sharing.
don't go away as you may want to continue to talk. We'll just cut you off as a panelist and put you back as whatever the other term is.
Thank
Sarah?
you.
Sarah,
Yes, I'm changing it back to as an attendee.
attendee, that's the word I was looking for. Okay, Mr., you still there?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
No, I was looking for the neighbor.
The neighbor, okay.
This is-
Stephen, I just gave him permission to
Yeah.
speak.
So
Okay.
just 2 more points. I mean, I think that, obviously adding additional hardscape up there is not to the advantage of the downhill neighbors. I also just wanted to comment on averages, comparison to averages. And, you see this in a lot of parts of life these days, that everybody wants to benchmark against an average. And every time somebody goes over the average, like a 23% increase in coverage, the average goes up. And it just asked me to go back to the original idea of why was there coverage restrictions in the first place? Because if we keep all of us in the neighborhoods keep adding additional coverage, the average will go up, and we'll just be comparing to ever higher averages. So I think there was a reason for the standards in the first place, and particularly in this particular geological configuration, it's worth considering. And I appreciate all of your time. Thank you.
What about, you said there were 2 other neighbors?
Yeah, I don't, Dan, are you on? Sarah, did you enable Dan to speak?
Yes, I was just
Hi.
giving you
If you're
each your own time.
Okay.
All right, if you're finished, we'll move on to the next public.
Thank you very much.
Very well done, by the way.
I accidentally added him as a panelist. Hold on one second. Okay. Dan should be able to speak now.
Am I audible? Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
We hear you.
Okay, hi. My name is Dr. Dan Neonalto. It says Karsten on there, but that's my wife's name. And I'm at 35 Park Road. This doesn't affect me as much as my Palliser neighbors, but I'm joining them out of concern on principle and also practically, because it will affect a portion of my property potentially. I think that
Excuse me, is Cork Road that little dead end street?
It's 35 Park. It's that private road.
Sorry, I thought you said Cork.
No. So it's right off, it's that yellow house on the hill, if you know the neighborhood.
Okay.
So, I think Stephen spoke eloquently, articulately, on the subject. And I'm not an engineer by any stretch. I'm a psychiatrist, frankly, by trade. So, I have the same concerns. I just want to echo those. You all know that, whatever percent is allowable, it seems if you exceed that, it also needs to be taken into account relative to elevation and bedrock. And you all seem to be right on top of that. And the other thing is the comparing to other homes in the neighborhood seems to me wrong-headed, because it's almost like 2 wrongs don't make a right. And this whole idea of creeping standards that Stephen spoke to, I think, is of concern. That there's a risk of changing the standards from 14 to 15 to 16, and that's a scary proposition. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for your concern and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Sarah, is there another public? I thought the first speaker said there might be two.
Yes, there is somebody else I would like to speak. Their display name is Levin. So
I'm sorry.
their display name only shows Levin, the last name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, terrific. Hi, this is Lawrence Levin. We live at 4 Palliser Road, and I guess I just time and effort you're putting into this, and obviously we all realize the end point here is to try to come up with a solution that hopefully satisfies everybody. And I also obviously want to thank my neighbors as well for the time and effort they're putting into this. I take a simplistic approach. By trade, I know by my trade that fluids flow downhill. The fluids take the path of least resistance, and there's no question.
Somehow that never changes.
I'm sorry?
I said somehow that never changes.
It never changes, does it? And so I think obviously the major concern here is not just the situation of if there's a rainfall, but also I want to make sure we're keeping in mind the potential for a catastrophic outcome. You know, I'm sure the engineers know this better than I do, but we have to take into account the possibility of not just a rain shower, but lightning or other major catastrophic events that could offset the plan. And so, you know, again, I know we're all trying to make it the best outcome for everybody, including our neighbor who wants to build the pool. But I think we also have to keep in mind the potential for adverse outcomes for all of us. And so I think I appreciate everyone's efforts. And I just want to reiterate what my neighbors, Dr. Nalto and Stephen Hardy said, that appreciate everyone's effort here. Thank you.
Thank you. And for yourself and the other two members who spoke, that this applicant is coming back again to flesh out what we talked about. So it may be a good idea if you stay tuned to the next meeting. Okay.
Can I just add one thing that if the applicant is.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to poll the board. Go ahead. You're first.
Oh, I'm sorry. If the applicant has to come back, they might also consider alternative locations for this pool that don't have as big of an impact on both the site and the visual impact of this.
Well, in light of that, I mean, the length of the pool is downhill, which creates a larger retaining wall. If it were the other way, it might be a smaller. So orientation and location of the pool, as George said, would be something to look at by the applicant. Dan, anything else after the listening to the public?
No, the public were very on target with the issues and concerns, so I have no further comments.
Kevin?
Nothing to add. Thanks.
Mike?
I have nothing to add except no matter what the orientation is, I still would like to know whether it can even be built.
Yes,
I'd like to know about the rock formation. If it can't be built, then I don't know why, why we need to spend as much time on this as we are.
Yeah, the whether it can be built, there's clear rock outcrops. And if the pool has to be moved because the rock is right there, then they have to come back to us anyway. If the pool has to be moved in any way, higher or lower, or shifted to avoid rock, like when I built my brother's house, we had to move the house 3 or 4 times before we found the right spot where the basement could go. And the other thing about rock and water for the stormwater disposal system, water is funny. It'll go down vertically until it hits rock, and then it'll run along. Like the gentleman said, the water will run downhill on top of the rock until it pops out someplace on a downhill side, most likely at Palliser. So, these are real concerns. It's not fair to create a flooding problem. And the rock situation here, I think, is a serious matter in terms of this project creating a water problem on other properties. Okay, does the applicant have anything further to say? Your marching orders or?
I just wanted to review the marching orders for the next meeting. So I have additional east to west sections and all sections to not be of an exaggerated vertical scale, and that also include the subsurface storm system and adjacent trees. So that will require the final storm design, which will also,
Troy,
and-
Troy, I would just, sorry to interrupt, I would lighten up the vertical and horizontal lines because it makes it a little difficult to see.
okay, so we'll
If that's-
change the format of that, but most importantly, it'll be of natural, unexaggerated scale. We'll do the final storm design, and that'll involve identifying the location of rock. We will look at alternative orientations, and we will revise the presentation of the variance comparison to be the amount, the percentage over variance number, which I understand.
And, you know, the three gentlemen that spoke had a valid point about it. You know, every time you raise the average a little bit, the average gets bigger for the next guy, you know, a creeping code. So I'd like you to address that if you can.
Okay. Okay, so that's what I have. And of course, we'll take a look at the Doug's comments and the landscape consultant's comments as well, and we'll address all those.
Yeah, this fill would treat the fill that you're proposing and where it might run if you got a significant slope when you're finished with your fill. The fill creates tree problems because from what I'm told and from past applications, anything more than 3 inches over roots will kill the tree. And this has 2 feet over roots.
Yeah, we'll just end up extending the retaining wall on the side of the pool to reduce that down to 0. So we have ways to address those concerns.
And I don't think we covered it last time, so I don't want to surprise you next time. You're going to have a pool, you're going to have lighting, and the lighting has to be dark sky compliant.
Sure.
Troy, it'd be helpful if you pulled up the county topo on those neighboring lots so we can have an idea where everything drains to currently anyway. It's got walls around there. It'd be good to see.
Yeah, sure. I think that's the best I can do without trespassing on other people's property to do that.
Well, the guy, some of the past, there's a relative simple way going to the county to look at coverages calculations. I don't know how simple it is, but it's available without
Well,
going.
the coverage, they can use the Greenberg GIS system for house size, but that won't include patios, stoops, and walls.
Okay. All right. I think we're done. We did the public, we did our own staff, and you have, and Doug, you'll codify what we're talking about in a review letter. Essentially, what he verbally went through as marching orders. This will come as a letter also.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have any other? What about pool drainage? I have my last note here.
You mentioned that in there too. He's going to have to address that. That's in our memo also.
Okay. All right, I think we're done here. Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
have quite a bit of work to do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night.
That was number 4. We're done with that. Number 5 is 2021-05, 26 Willow Street.
Hello, John Malone again, Ferguson Malone Architecture.
Before you start, John, I want to make a comment. In my about 6 years I'm on the planning board. This is the first instance that something went over to the ZBA. And this is not being critical, it's just a statement of fact. Something went over to ZBA and came back totally different for us to look at, approved by the ZBA. And I'd just like to say for the applicant, it's unfortunate that you're the recipient of something as unusual as the sequence of events that took place on this application. With that said, John, go ahead.
So, yes, that's what's happened, what Caesar said. So we left with an approved project for a screen porch. ZBA, we had 2 meetings at the ZBA. There was a specific.
Hold on one more. I have a basic question I have to ask Mary Ann. Marianne, as I stated, this is a new and different proposal than the one we previously approved. And we discussed public notice or a public notice not needed. Have you come up with a solution? Is a new public notice necessary because might be a new project defined as a new project?
Yeah, well, what I did see was that because I watched the video of the zoning board meeting, and the two neighbors who appeared at that meeting, as you recall, nobody appeared at the
At our first
planning
meeting.
board meeting with any concerns. And you could say, if anything, this project is actually maybe a little bit less of a presence because it's a deck instead of a porch. But in any event, there were two neighbors who appeared at the zoning board who had fairly strong feelings. And I noticed that they're both here. Pat Natarelli and the Lucashes are both at this meeting. So they would be the ones most concerned. They could speak at this meeting, and I feel like that's adequate notice.
Okay, with that said, John, you're on.
So we made changes to the project to reduce the visual impact and also potentially the activity impact in the rear yard. And the project now, just quickly to discuss the changes, if I'll share screen. I mean, you guys know the project, but I can go through it quickly. We were proposing in the hold on one second. In this area to the rear, we were proposing a screen porch, and that screen porch extended out approximately 3 to 4 feet past where this is located now, and stairs down to the bottom. The goal of that screen porch was that was where the activity, the eating and sitting was going to happen within that screen porch. The revised project is to eliminate the screen porch, reduce the footprint to the minimum amount that would be required to get a stair down to the rear yard. As you know, we basically reduced the project to the priority to the owner, which was basically having direct access from the kitchen to the rear yard, and moved the patio area down to the ground level. What this allowed us to do was, by putting the activity down at a lower level, it was easier to screen to the neighbor to the northwest. And it's not covered enclosed screen space anymore, but it does allow them to use the rear of the house better. And mostly, the access to the rear yard was sort of crucial for safety. If you have kids playing in the backyard, you need to get them water, one's choking or something, you can't go all the way up through the front of the house and back in to get that. So it really improves the access to the house. That was one of the projects that was associated with the screen porch, and it was the most crucial piece that we wanted to keep since we had resistance to the larger project. So this is, you can see the proposed project is really just a slight expansion of the existing. There's an existing deck there now that has no stairs, so that deck has been made slightly larger to accommodate these stairs down to the ground, and that's the limit of what we're asking for at this point.
All right, John, hold that thought for a minute. I forgot something. Kevin, if I recollect, you recused yourself from the last time this was submitted. I assume you're recused on this submittal?
Correct.
And Laurie Davidowitz, you're sitting in. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. John, go ahead. I wanted to make the record clear.
Right. So I think tonight we did receive a few comments. The material below the deck hasn't changed. There's an existing concrete patio that's underneath the area of the deck. We aren't proposing any changes to that. The variance we can provide, we neglected to provide an updated worksheet. The documents that are on the drawings are correct, but we can provide an updated worksheet confirming, matching the drawings that are shown on the drawings.
Now,
And
correct me
then-
if I'm wrong, John, the variances needed for the deck and the patio were granted by the ZBA. Is that not
They
correct?
were granted at the coverage, setback levels that are indicated on the drawing set.
Okay, go ahead, move on.
And then the last thing was the elevation of the existing wall in the rear yard, which is approximately 18 inches along the back. The separation between the Lukacs property and this property. So if we go quickly back to the site plan, there's a small existing retaining wall along the rear yard here.
You got a picture of it or something?
You know, I don't have some, it's a small block wall along the rear yard here. There's an existing fence that is sitting on top of it. We're replacing that fence that's sitting on top of it.
Well, you're replacing that fence with what?
With a new fence that's indicated here, a 5 foot high fence indicated here, similar to what's there, the existing fence is.
Is this fence that you say you're replacing the existing fence? Was that in the original application that we approved?
It was. There's no change there.
There's no change to that fence that we already approved.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So that's the limit of what we're doing. We've kept all of the planting that was mitigating planting that we developed at this board for both Pat Nettarelli's property and then also for the Lukacs. I think the Lukacs are less concerned about the mitigating planting, but we've left that in place because it also, you know, buffers the fence a little bit. And, you know, it could be, these are plants that could grow higher than the fence if you chose to let them. So it could provide more or less screening depending on how you maintain the plants. And we've left the mitigation that we've shown here to the south as well, where the neighbor was.
You have a view of the fence. You say it's an existing wall, and then there's some kind of material fence is going to be on top of the wall.
Right. I don't think I have something that I can show you quickly right now. It's basically an 18-inch high block wall, and then on top of that wall.
When you say block, concrete block, stone, what?
It's a concrete block wall with a crappy stucco finish on it. Right.
That's high tech terminology.
Yeah, I was gonna say crappy's an architectural term, huh?
Yeah, so it is being replaced. So you see that the existing wall is indicated to be repaired. So we're gonna it's really called parging. It's like it's not a true stucco, but it's a parged wall. So that's gonna be corrected.
It's gonna be corrected on the applicant's side or both sides?
On the neighbor's side. On the applicant side, it's basically flush with grade, and then it drops off on the neighbor's side.
I see. But you're going to fix the appearance by changing the appearance. And,
right, by just repairing what's
and then
there.
what is it that's on top of this fence that we already approved? Is it wood fence, plastic fence?
It's a wood board fence.
Is it a solid fence or is it picket fence?
It's a solid fence. So that's the fence detail.
Oh, okay. There's no fancy curly cues on the top or anything. It's just a basic fence.
Yeah, very basic.
Okay. All right, and did the zoning board opine on this fence?
There was discussion about the fence. The neighbor to the north wanted the fence to be higher. The neighbor directly behind didn't want the fence to be any higher than what was shown.
And so, what does the applicant desire? What is proposed, I guess?
What is proposed? So we're leaving it at the 5 feet. Part of it is our concern that the overall height of the 5 foot, once it's on top of the 18-inch wall on the rear yard, it is too much for the neighbor. So if we look here at where the fence applies to the 2 yards, the fence is proposed to go, you know, from this point to this point. The majority of the fence is across the Lukacs yard, and a small portion of it is across the Nattarelli yard. Pat Nattarelli had requested that the fence be increased from the point of our property line about 15 feet in to the property, which would mean that you'd have a higher fence, an 8-foot fence in front of a portion of the Lukacs property, and then potentially step it down.
Now, if I'm correct, the Nattarelli property has an existing fence. Would this proposed fence abutting the Natarelli fence be higher than the Natarelli fence?
Yes, so his fence is at the maximum height now, but since the grade is 18 inches lower there, ours would end up being higher.
And the proposed approved fence is the same height as Natarelli, or higher or lower?
It's a 5-foot fence from grade, which makes it lower than I believe the Natarelli fence is. Pat's here, I think someone had mentioned, so he may have a better accurate sense of what that is. But I believe right now the fence that as proposed might be the same height as what's his fence is there. I think again, the screening that we're focused on is the vegetative screen that we're showing there, and also the activity that was proposed for the screen porch in this area has now been moved down to grade. So the existing fence does a much better job of screening that activity than it would have, up at the deck level. So we had hoped that.
John, I just want to, is this fence now, the one in this plan, the same as the fence that was the planning board approved 2 months ago?
Yes, same fence.
Okay.
Right, I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, so the only thing different is the deck and the patio.
Right, so,
From
and the
what you
plant,
already approved.
right, the planting is the same as what was approved by the planning board at the last meeting, 2 months ago as well.
John, I did have a question, and you were going to fix it. The 3 trees to the south property line.
Yes.
I had asked that you were going to put trees there, that the new trees, when you dig the hole for the new tree, you don't want to disturb the roots of the existing tree. I hope you addressed that.
Right, I think we reviewed locations with the actual neighbor there. These are skip laurel shrubs. And in actuality, what will happen is those will be positioned relative to views and roots. The neighbor is also interested in keeping the stuff that's there, making sure everything thrives. So we'll do that with their input as well.
Okay, thanks, John. And to be clear, the previously approved fence abutting the Natarelli property is not higher than the Natarelli fence.
I believe that Pat's existing fence is 8 feet from grade, and what we're proposing is 5 foot from grade. So they probably will end up in about the same area. If ours
Okay.
might be a little bit lower.
And just one last question, Ed. There were height issues in the code. I presume since we have previously approved this fence that there are no code issues with the current height as was proposed by John?
Correct.
Okay,
But it is at the limit.
okay,
Yeah,
But-
but it's on
it meets code.
It
Okay,
meets code, right, but can't go higher.
okay. And if it went higher, they would have to go back to the ZBA. if I
For
understand.
variance, yes.
Okay, Dan, any comment?
No comments. I'd just like to hear what the neighbors have to say.
Before the neighbors speak, Kevin, you have anything?
Kevin's
Well,
recused.
Kevin's
Oh, I'm
recused.
sorry.
You mean Mike and Lori.
Lori, Davidowitz,
Yeah, no comment.
Mike Smith.
Yeah, I have 2 questions because it's something still not clear to me. John, in what way is the proposed deck different from the one we previously approved, other than it's no longer enclosed?
It's reduced in size. So before it was, I'll annotate on here. The proposed screen porch extended out here. Can you see that, Mike?
Yes. Mhm.
And now the existing deck is right here. That's the extent of
Right.
the existing deck.
Right.
And we are only extending the deck by this 3 feet, which allows us to get these stairs down. So before we had extended the screen porch another I think it was like 3.5 feet.
Right.
And that allowed us to get another seating area in there in addition to the table.
Okay.
So,
And so, all right. And in terms of the patio area, how is that different from what we previously approved
we did not have coverage or patio on the ground.
at all?
No, we were using this as the area. Now this is the area that would become the seating for the table.
And I haven't seen, was there detail for that patio area?
Yeah, it's, let me see which, hold on one sec. It's on a flexible bed patio. So on a stone dust bed. It's located close to the house also, just not to extend into the rear yard setback, but also that keeps it away from areas where there's roots and potential tree impacts.
And so Ed, I assume that doesn't create a coverage problem, issue?
No, they got
It
the
all addressed
variance.
at ZBA.
Mike, they got, the variance was also for coverage.
Okay, fine. Okay, I have no other questions. Thanks, John.
George?
Yeah, so John, I think that what you were saying a little bit before, maybe I misunderstood, was that you were talking about the activity was going to be basically down at grade. But it seems to me like there's going to be activity as well up on this upper deck. Is that correct? It's not just circulation, because if it was, then it would just be a lot smaller.
I think there may be some activity up, but the activity there would now be similar to what was already happening on the existing deck, where I think the neighbor was concerned that the activity, because it was covered and screened in, would lead to more activity and inclement weather and more seasons. So whatever activity that's going to happen up there now, there won't be, it's reduced from what we had shown, and it's similar to what's there now. But the goal is to move the eating and the table down to the lower level.
Right. And are there any other decks that encroach on this lot or this block to the?
There are other decks that we believe are encroaching on the rear yard. It's hard for us to do that without survey, but the client has done a lot of looking into that, and there are other stuff in that area. Just in general, I think we discussed this before, that there is a garage encroachment in almost every rear yard along the entire property on both sides. So there's a lot of rear yard incursion in general. I know that people have said that garage incursion is different because it has a different level of activity, but some of the garages have been turned into living space. There's other incursions. So we don't feel like this incursion is out of character or different from the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the garages is that probably before this house was built, there was another house here that had a garage as well that they got rid of to make this house happen.
Right.
So these are vestiges, and this is much more about, doing something new on here. And the big concern for me, at least, is now, I have to say, when I first saw this, I was very supportive of it. Unfortunately, I didn't read it well enough. And, now seeing it, and this is significantly better than what was originally proposed. But my fear is about what everyone else is going to want to do onto this rear yard. And so I think your explanation of that the activity is going to be down at the rear yard, not necessarily up. If that's the case, then it seems hard for me to understand why you wouldn't just have literally just a stair and a landing to get down to that activity, therefore further reducing this. But again, it's sort of water under the bridge if you've already gotten approval from the zoning board for this, which is, again, if Caesar said this is the first time in 6 years, I don't know how many years I've been on this thing, but I've never seen a process like this before. So this is new, and I guess I can't really comment about the planning of this because it's already been approved by zoning, which seems to be backwards. And second of all, I think that for me, this becomes a big thing about how do you mitigate for the neighbors, because one has to always recognize that it's your client who's trying to do something that doesn't fit to the code, and the neighbors have equal or more rights, in my opinion, of saying yes or no to this. So I would like to hear how the neighbors feel about specifically what we have to deal with, which as I understand now, is just this fence. Is that correct?
It appears that way, George.
Okay, that's all.
Well, that's the next step to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
to ask Sarah, and she already mentioned there's two publics out there. Pick one, Sarah, and let's ask for comment from the public.
Okay, yeah, Pat Natarelli is raising his hand, so I'm gonna allow him first.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Pat.
Okay. Well, really, I really was just going to listen and not comment, but when I hear so many errors being made, I have to comment on what's going on here. First of all, let me go back in time. December 23rd, a letter was sent out to me and to my neighbors saying that this rear yard building was going to be proposed, and I received it on December 24th, Christmas Eve. I went to look online to see the plans, and there were no plans online on that date. So I said, okay, it's a holiday. I'll let it go. I'll pick up on it next week. And unfortunately, I forgot about it. And the next time I saw it was when I received a letter from the ZBA saying that this matter was before the ZBA. Because I just want to bring this to the planning board's attention, because you would have received, Caesar, you received a copy of the letter that I sent to the ZBA. I CC'd you on it. I don't know if you shared it with the other members of the planning board. That
Well,
letter,
Pat, to answer your question, at the meeting that you weren't at, Dan McEllicott went through your letter and the questions you had asked. You can check the minutes if I remember correctly. Dan went through the letter and asked pertinent questions from your letter, Dan McEllicott.
well, but that,
We
that
did
letter
get
was
the
dated-
letter, and we even though it wasn't to us, we did address it. Thank you. Okay, you move
Right,
on.
but unfortunately, that my point is, I didn't get to your board for your January meeting, which I would have presented all those comments to you. Maybe you would have had a different approach to the zoning board with this matter if I had gotten to the board, because as I've said, if I were still on the planning board when this was presented to me, this would not have gone on to the ZBA. If it had gone on to the ZBA, there would have been a letter of negative comment, because they were requesting a variance of 41% on the rear yard setback. They already had a variance of 17% on the rear yard setback. I mean, at what point does, the zoning board has to look at what's substantial and what's excessive. They already had a 17% variance, which is substantial as far as I'm concerned, as a planner, and as a 41% variance would have been way excessive. And that's why the zoning board, I went to the zoning board then in January and in February and made those comments. And I think they saw what was being proposed and then cut it back and requested that the applicant cut it back at this point. So, and again, so that's where we're at as far as the zoning board and the planning board is concerned. As far as the request and what exists in the neighborhood right now, there is no other variance of even 1% in the rear yard setback on either the west side of Willow Street or the east side of Maple Street. If you would like, I'd be glad to send you a copy of the map that I sent to the planning board. To the zoning board showing that. So let's get off of that. There are no other variances.
Excuse me interrupting you about there are no, except for the garages that are built on the property line. You need to.
Caesar, the garages predate the zoning ordinance.
I
They
know,
go back
but-
to the 1920s.
let's
There
not-
was no zoning
let's not
ordinance at
forget,
that point,
they're on
and they
the property.
predated.
That's true.
That's
but
what's important.
They are on the property line. Continue.
Yes, they are, but they predate the zoning.
Okay, as long as
This
you
house
recognize
does
the
not
fact that
predate
there are
this-
existing buildings
Excuse me,
on
this
the
house does not predate the zoning, nor does the variance predate the zoning.
Okay.
The variance was granted in 1966. The house was built in 1954. Let's just get that straight, okay? I just want the facts to be straight so that when you get future variances requests like this, that you consider what is the impact in the community, not just what's the impact to that particular lot. That's what the zoning board and the planning board should be looking at. What's the impact to the surrounding neighbors, not to what's the impact on the neighbor that is proposing this.
Excuse me for 1 second, if you don't mind. Ed, I'm just remembering that on Maple Street, and I think it was on the west side, there was a deck enlargement that needed to go to zoning. Am I correct?
I couldn't recall at this time.
Okay. Actually, I think,
Or was it for the rear yard setback, George?
yeah, Pat, I think you were on the board on it as well. I think it was like basically across the street from you. Am I right?
On Willow Street?
No, it was
No,
on
on-
Maple.
On Maple.
Or across the street from me?
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a variance, though.
Well,
I think it
that's
was a
my
site
recollection.
plan.
But,
But yeah, the neighbor right across the street from me that moved in several years ago, they were proposing a staircase that came down the side of the house, but it didn't require zoning board approval. It just required planning board approval.
Yeah,
And he got a variance for his rear yard.
What, Ed?
So anyway, that's our point. And let me just make some statements too about the fence that's being proposed and what the fences are that exist already. First of all, my yard is about probably 2 feet lower right at the property line than the applicant's. All right. My fence is 6 feet high. It meets code. So my fence in effect probably is about 4 to 5 feet high on the applicant's property. What I had requested of them was to construct a fence that would be higher than that would give me some additional privacy. Because right now their deck looks right into my backyard. Their deck is about 10 feet higher than my patio in my backyard, and they look right into my backyard. So I was requesting that they build a fence that would be about 1.5 feet higher than my fence, which would be 6.5 feet from the top of. It's not a retaining wall. It's actually the wall that is at the top of their elevation of their rear yard. And originally they proposed to do it, and then there was some comment that they sent to me saying that, oh, Ed Marin said that this wouldn't meet code, and so they said they weren't going to do it. I still am concerned about the privacy in my rear yard. They're proposing one arborvitae, one green giant. I have concerns about whether that arborvitae will survive, let alone thrive back there. I know Suzanne Nolan reviewed these plans, was okay with it. I must say, Suzanne is an excellent landscape architect. She worked for me at Westchester County Planning Department, but I've also consulted with my landscape architect and an arborist. And unless that tree gets at least 4 hours of sunlight during the day, it's very, very unlikely that it will survive back there. And right now it is under the canopy of about 4 or 5 maple trees on the Lucas's property and a 70-foot honey locust on the applicant's property. So it's really highly unlikely that tree is going to thrive, let alone survive back there. So I have concerned about that. And that's why I requested that they build a fence that's higher so that I would get some additional privacy. Again, because this additional 3.5 feet of their deck is going to be closer to my rear yard. And again, looking down right into my rear yard, which is about 10 feet lower. So that's where I'm at this point. And I would hope that the planning board would have the applicant provide that additional fencing to give me some privacy. Again, that's a couple of the issues that the zoning board did not take up, which I believe they should have taken up, because that was really their purview under the granting of a variance, that they should make sure that the neighbors are protected. But it also is stated quite clearly in the
Pat, if you're still talking, you're gone. Sarah?
the purpose of the zoning ordinance. It says quite clearly here, prior of, thank you.
Pat, are you looking for something? Because we're not hearing you. Or are you just looking for something to read?
No, I just quoted to you from Article 1 of the zoning ordinance, Section 224-1.
If you were quoting something, we didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, it's Article 1 of the zoning ordinance, the purpose of the zoning ordinance, Section 224-1. And it says one of the purposes is the provision of privacy for families. And I just don't think that's what's being accomplished here, as far as I'm concerned.
Was there a reason why the zoning board didn't take action on your request for the higher fence?
Yeah, they said they're going to leave it to the planning board, which I believe they were incorrect in doing.
Well, if they're going to leave it to the planning board, that's, if we decide on a higher fence, it still has to go back to the zoning board because it needs a variance.
That you have to discuss with Ed. As far as I was concerned, I didn't see it that way. From what I read in the zoning ordinance, you could have a fence that's 6.5 feet high. And that would meet the requirements of a fence. Beyond that, it's then becomes a different type of structure and requires maybe different kind of bracing in the ground.
I don't know. I had the impression in talking to the village attorney and to the village building inspector that if the proposed fence, which was previously approved, if the fence was as high as you asked for, it would require a variance because it would not meet the current code.
We're consistent in our interpretation for the last 20 years. The wall counts as part of the height of a fence. We're not going to change our interpretation for one application.
Okay, so then.
So excuse me, let me just ask you a question, Ed. So in other words,
Pat, let me finish my thought.
Okay.
So it is correct then, Ed, if the proposed fence were to be higher, based on what you said was 20 years of application, they would need to go back to the ZBA to get a variance for the higher fence.
That is my opinion and my interpretation.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question then?
Go ahead, Pat.
So in other words, then, if the elevation is changed on a property and a wall of 8 feet or 6 feet were to be built, you're saying then that you could not put a fence on top of that wall?
Ed, you want to handle that?
Is that what you're saying, Ed? I'm asking Mr. Maron that question.
Yeah.
First of all, you asked the chairman and didn't ask me.
That's
Second,
true.
I'm not going to answer hypothetical questions that are open-ended. Show me a drawing of what you want to do and we'll make an interpretation for it. But we're not going to do an open-ended what if all night. Okay. The fact of the matter is my interpretation has been, and it's never changed in 20 years, that a wall and a fence count as one. We have sent more than this application to the ZBA for that issue. Okay. The ZBA didn't act on it. It's in front of the board. The fence, in my opinion and in my interpretation, is compliant with the zoning code.
The current fence.
Yeah.
Currently proposed fence.
Okay. Pat, don't go away. We're going to go to the other public, and then if you have further comment, we'll come back to you. Sarah, you want to tune out Pat and tune in the other person?
Yes, there's two other neighbors I'd like to speak. The first person that raised their hand was it's a group, Andy and Betsy. Next.
Okay.
Hi there. Thank you for hearing us.
Could you identify yourself and your?
Yeah, we're at 28 Willow Street. We're the property adjacent on the south.
Andrew Raybould and Betsy Donovan. One issue that has been coming up since the second presentation that we've been raising is the fact that we have a tree to the close to where the stormwater chamber is going to be put. It's along the fence line, approximately a little less than 20 feet in from the street. And we'd raised the issue of the disturbance of the ground in the construction of the stormwater chamber. And we understood that some sort of mitigation would be looked into, but the only thing that's changed since then is that the zone of disturbance has moved closer to the fence line. It's now approximately 5 feet from where the tree is. This tree has a canopy, it's a flowering dogwood, it has a canopy that extends out over that property somewhat beyond the line, the south line of the house. I would say that it's approximately 10 feet in radius. So the zone of disturbance would be well within the drip line of this tree. And we're concerned that the construction as for this stormwater chamber as described will disturb the tree.
And I'm looking at Susan Nolan's, which is our landscape architect, comments, and she has no recommendations. But you know, you're raising an issue that we can certainly bring to the attention, or to bring it back to the attention of our landscape architect.
Where's the tree located?
I guess in the southwest corner there.
It's not on the corner. It's
Not
So
right
the
by
stormwater system is in the front.
yeah, and it's about 20 feet in from the streets, close to the fence line. It's
On
not
the
shown
east
on the
side?
map. It was supposed to be put on the map, but it hasn't on the diagram. It hasn't been.
Oh.
Put
I think,
a little
Andy,
further. I
is it
think.
about there?
No, it's a
No.
little further towards the street.
A little closer to the street, like here?
Yeah, I think somewhere like that. It's about halfway between the house and the street,
And the canopy extends how far, do you think?
to about where you've got that.
Right,
And,
right about
a little
there?
further, yeah.
Okay, so,
The tree is actually right on the fence line.
Maybe you
Right.
can hand dig that section.
yeah, I think, you know, we had tried to make sure that the stormwater, which is the significant portion of the excavation, is outside of that. You know, we are showing one pipe. This is a 4-inch line that's coming between the stormwater there. That can be hand dug, and any roots that are associated with that can be clipped by hand. The issue with a tree like that, the root disturbance, you know, it would be best to have 0 root disturbance, but a tree like that
Mhm.
could certainly take a little bit of root disturbance, and especially at the outer edges of the canopy, as long as those roots are dealt with carefully and you don't end up scarring large roots. So,
You could take a more direct route also. from
yeah,
the
right.
gate
And this is
into-
the other thing we can do, is just go like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything preventing the sump box 16 being repositioned to the north of the gas line by 2 feet? I see that currently you have a line, I think, coming down from the downpipe, going south into the sump box, and then it's.
Yeah. John, that's in the location of the existing downspout, isn't it?
The listings downspout is on this side of the house.
And
So
there's a
you
second
could-
one.
You could run the downspout across the gas line and put the sump in this bed here, and then go into the side. I think you can go into the side of this chamber. Can you go in the side of this chamber? I think there's a.
As long as the overflow won't affect, won't negatively impact the house in any way.
Right. So one of the reasons we put this here, Andy, is it does act as an overflow. So the grade is sort of going down in this direction. So in an overflow condition, it doesn't send water into the basement. So tucking it in behind the house like that would probably cause more damage than the potential damage to, you know, any potential damage to the tree. You know, it has the more risk to this existing house than that. But certainly changing this path to do something like that has, you know, very little impact, and it would eliminate that bend. So that's probably fine.
Yeah, we'd like to see that on the plans if that's possible.
Okay, we can agree to that tonight, or we can redraw that with Doug and show that on the plans. We can also add a note about, I'm not sure if that notes might already be there about cutting trees. I can look, but cutting roots where there's disturbance. I think it most likely is already on the plan associated with the planting in the rear yard.
Hey, John, would you explain to me what you're planning to do so I can make sure that it's a condition if?
We're gonna modify the path of the underground piping between the sump box and the Coltech unit or the infiltrator to make a direct route and reduce the disturbance on the tree root area.
Essentially, you're moving it quite a distance away. You're going on a diagonal instead of a square.
Right, right.
Well, that would eliminate the need for a manhole at the 90-degree turn, so,
Right,
which would be more digging.
right.
Okay.
Can
All
I ask
right. Thank you for that comment. The engineer has indicated that if you can see the yellow line, it's
Yeah.
further away than the current 90-degree angle going into the sump box. So that puts the digging of that yellow line further away from the roots. So, okay,
Yeah, I
Andy,
was just curious, how deep is this line we're talking about?
The depth of the line, I'm not sure if it's indicated here. Oh, there it is. The invert is at 87.5.
18 inches.
Yeah, it's about 18 inches down.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would definitely make a difference because current, that would put it within root range, depth of the roots, I assume, right?
Right. Right. Again, and I think, the area, moving it, like we said, would limit the impact, but I think this kind of disturbance is going to be much less than something like a Coltech or, it can be something that could be hand dug.
Okay, yeah, we're fine with that.
okay, you okay with that? You're finished with your comment. We appreciate your concern for your tree. Probably a rather large tree, so you wouldn't want to have anything happen to it. So thank you for your thoughts. And you had an impact. We're going to move the pipe. Anything else?
That's all from us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Sarah, you want to? There was a third public.
Yes, Sylvia Lukic.
Okay.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very clear. Yes, please identify yourself and your address.
Sorry. Yes, this is Justin Lukash. I'm Sylvia's husband. We are 31 Maple Street, so we're the neighbors directly to the west of the applicant.
The left being west. Okay.
Yes, directly to the west.
I thought you said left. Okay, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I think I appreciate the changes that were made in scaling back the protrusion. We already, as has been indicated, the applicant's house is at a higher grade, so there's already overlook onto our property. And my feeling is the requested or proposed extension, I haven't gone back to high school geometry in a while, but the angles wouldn't lead to significant further view into our yard, essentially. So I appreciate the size that they've proposed. And as has been raised, I think our concern was more with the fence. And I think the chairman had raised the question, which was what I was going to ask, was my preference from our perspective of the fence, from where we sit, is that it be sort of consistent with the height of the existing fence to our north, which I think has been indicated is 6 feet, so well within the code. The proposed fence would from our perspective, would be 6.5. So 1.5 feet of wall and 5 foot of fence. And our preference would be that it be 4.5 foot of fence. Therefore, from our perspective, we would have sort of 2 6-foot barriers between us. Since the height of the wall isn't going to change privacy without being a extraordinarily high wall, I would prefer the aesthetics to be sort of consistent. But otherwise, I appreciate the changes that were made. So thank you.
I want to make it clear. I want it clear in my head what you just said. The proposed wall, as proposed, I think you said, and we talked about its compatibility with the existing fence to your north. And Mr. Malone indicated that it's about the same. Visually, it would be at the same height, but since you're 2 feet lower, or a couple of feet lower, anything that the applicant puts up, even though it may be, I'll just pick a number, 5 feet from your side, it looks like 7 feet. And you're okay with the wall that was proposed as proposed without any changes that was suggested by your neighbor to the north?
Just my preference, and I haven't actually gone to measure the retaining wall. I believe what, I think John Malone could confirm, I believe what's indicated in the drawings here is that the retaining wall is 1.5 feet high, and that there would be a 5-foot fence on top. And
Yes,
so
that's
would
our
leave,
understanding.
okay, so that would, from our side, that would be a 6.5 foot obstruction, I'll call it. I'm not sure the technical term.
Right.
Whereas the fence to the north is 6 foot. So my preference would be, what I think was asked earlier is, could the proposed fence be essentially a 6 foot total? So 1.5 feet of wall and what is that, 4.5 feet of fence.
So Caesar, we're being asked to lower, he's asking to lower the fence from 5 feet to 4'6". So we're proposing a 5 foot and he's asking to lower it to a 4'6".
I see. So I'm glad you clarified that because it wasn't clear. So what you're saying is you not only don't want it as high as your neighbor to the north wants it to be, you want it to be lower than what's proposed.
I do, for the reason that I want it to be consistent with the height of the existing fence from our perspective.
Okay, you want it to be consistent with the height of your neighbor to the north. Now, John, didn't you indicate you had you felt that the new fence that the applicant's going to put up would be approximately the same height as the existing fence?
Yeah, I think it's close, but I think what we're being told is that this fence to the north is maybe 6 foot directly from grade. And then this one might be 6'6", the way it's proposed right now. So I think, one way we could approach this is say that it's going to be a 5 foot max, but indicate that it would align with the height of the fence to the north, right? You could set it, this is a wood fence, so it could be set at an exact height.
Now, if it aligns with the fence to the north, would that meet code and not need to go back to the ZBA?
Yeah, I mean, we could say as long as we indicate that it's a 5 foot max. And I think, what we would be saying is a 5 foot max is where the code limitation is, given the 18-inch wall. And if it goes below that, in order to make a better alignment, which is what Mr. Lukach is asking for, that would it would be below the code allowed level.
Okay, so we're looking at alignment with the existing fence. And if that were done, it meets code and would not need a variance. The neighbor to the north, Mr. Natarelli, would want it higher. So I'm going to ask the board, I'm going to canvass the board as to if they need further clarity to ask a question and to opine on this dilemma. Dan?
I would like to hear what Pat says specifically in reference to the fence and what specifically you would like from us as a board.
Well, I think he wants the fence higher,
Well, yes,
posed, and not only higher adjacent to him, but that higher height would diagonally taper down on adjacent to the neighbor to the west. Okay,
so
look back to Pat. Let me
Okay.
go. Kevin,
Kevin,
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting. I'm just so involved in this thing. Laurie,
I have more hair than Kevin. So my feeling is that this homeowner has already revised their plan in an effort to appease their neighbors. They're adding, my understanding again is they're adding 3 feet to put a stair so that their backyard is much more usable than having to go out the front door and go around. I'm surprised that there's a privacy issue considering the deck already exists, and it's 3 extra feet aren't really going to change the privacy that the Natarellis do or don't have. I'm inclined that the homeowner should be able to put the fence up that works within the code and fits to what is already there without having to go for another variance or something like that. I think it's such a small addition to the deck that I can't imagine it really changes a neighbor's privacy concern.
thank you, Laurie. Mike,
I agree with Laurie. I do have a couple of questions. One for John would be, do we know when the deck was built? And if so, at that time, was there any requirement for any fencing along this rear yard? Second, I'm wondering, my understanding is that Pat's property, that portion of Pat's property is maybe 2.5 feet. And I'd want to confirm that. And third, I'd want to know from Pat, more to Laurie's point, is he complaining about the privacy from the existing deck, from the extended deck, or is he complaining about the anticipated privacy problem from the patio, which has already been, whose variance was approved by the ZBA? I'm not sure the answers to any of those questions.
okay.
But I
So
basically,
Michael, the one thing that I can answer is I think it's more than 2.5 feet. I think it's probably more like 5 feet.
okay.
What's 5 feet?
I think
That's probably,
the distance from
distance,
here to here,
okay.
I think is more than 2.5.
Okay.
okay.
And in terms of when the deck was built, the kitchen addition that was built in the 60s has a door out of it that I think is original, that's integral. So I assume that the deck was built at the same time. The deck may have been rebuilt since the 60s because, decks are made out of pressure treated. So it may have been rebuilt, but I think it was built at the same time. Or something similar was there. And I don't know if there were any, indications of privacy requirements at the time.
Wait, can I?
Marion, let's finish the board.
No, but it clarifies one of Mike's points, I think.
Okay.
But I want to just confirm with Ed. Ed, the patio isn't violating the rear yard setback, is it?
No, patios can go within 4 feet of the property lines.
Yeah, so to the extent you're talking about the patio, this patio is not the recipient of any variance and is not exceeding what's permitted. Patios can go.
Except for coverage, correct.
Yes.
Okay, but the patio had a coverage issue that they got a variance for?
Yeah, coverage, but it's not a setback issue. And they did
Okay.
get the variance for coverage.
Okay, for coverage. George, before we get back to Pat, you got any updated thoughts on this before we go back to Pat to answer Mike's questions and anything further he has to say? George, you with us?
All right, sorry about that. This is a real conundrum because, we have a neighbor that wants a deck and a stair so that they can bring their kids downstairs. we have another neighbor that wants to have consistent, edge around a cap around their wall, their fence. And then we have someone else who wants a much higher fence that goes beyond their property so that it kind of obstructs the view. So, boy, I don't know. The only thing I can say is this, to me, seems to be something that needs to get worked out between the three neighbors as opposed to us. And the only thing I would offer is what I hear that Pat is talking about is he's not convinced that the vegetation that the applicant is proposing is going to work. And if the applicant thinks it's going to work, then maybe this is one of those, you try it, and if it doesn't work, then something else has to happen. I don't know if that can happen. But it seems to me that that would be the most logical way to do this, is to give the neighbor that wants the fence down lower to make it consistent, which I think makes a lot of sense from their perspective. And, from Pat's perspective, he wants to have shading on this thing, and he's not convinced what's going to be done is going to work. Then let's try it and see if it does. And if it doesn't, then to put something in here that says if it fails, some other mitigation has to be done. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Mary Ann, to what George just said, if there were a resolution, is there a maintenance clause that if something dies, it needs to be replaced? If a tree dies, it has to be replaced?
Yeah, I'd like to be a little more specific about it, and I guess I need, I could write it in, but I'm not, if I understood better what the concern was.
Well, our landscape architect feels that tree in the northwest corner would be a nice shielding, a screening, and the neighbor in the northwest has an opposing view from a different arborist that because of the shading that tree might die. And while it's alive, it might serve the purpose, but there's a question as to whether it will survive. And as George said, is there some way of saying that if the projection of failure for that tree happens, even though somebody else says it's okay, but if somebody says it's not okay, we have to listen to that. It's another opinion. Is it some way of ensuring that if it goes south, there'll be a replacement, as George said?
Well, if we said something like, a condition would be that if the tree at the northwest corner, John, what's it identified as? What kind of tree?
It's an arborvitae, green giant arborvitae.
Wait, that's a shrub, isn't it?
No, it's proposed.
Wait, no, isn't that a shrub?
No, it's a relatively tall. It grows to like 20 feet.
Okay, so let me say, if the arborvitae.
Well, it's a specific arborvitae.
What?
It's
a specific arborvitae. There's half a dozen different types. John.
No.
Yeah, you could indicate the arborvitae indicated as AV in the drawing, which is a green giant arborvitae.
Well, could you stop? If the arborvitae at the northwest corner, I think that identifies it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fails, it must be replaced with a tree what? I mean, we can't just say it has to be replaced with obviously you wouldn't want to replace it with another arborvitae because the same thing would happen, and you can't just say with a tree with what? With a tree or shrub that does what?
It would be a shade tolerant evergreen or semi-evergreen.
No.
At a minimum height of 8 feet.
The important thing is what this tree is supposed to be accomplishing. It's supposed
Right. So I would say, that's why I would say evergreen or semi-evergreen at a minimum height of 8 feet.
Okay, I've got something, Caesar.
Okay, All right, Sarah, let's, Dan had some questions for Pat, and I'm sure Pat has some further thoughts now that he's heard the neighbor and our comments. So
Yes,
I assume he's raising his hand, so let's go back.
yes, yes.
Well, I guess I don't remember what the questions are. I do remember one comment, though, about having to go out the front door to get to the backyard, but that's not true. There is a rear door to this yard. It's right underneath the existing deck. That was all part of the variance that was granted in 1966, where the kitchen was extended, the deck was permitted, and the rear door was moved over to underneath the deck so they could have access out to the rear yard.
Okay, Mike, you want to, you had a couple of questions that appeared to me pertinent. Maybe you can reiterate them for Pat.
Sure, Pat. So I don't know whether you had personal knowledge of the deck when it was first built, but when the deck was built, was there an issue raised as to privacy, and should there be fencing along the rear yard?
I can't answer that. That was 1966. I've been around a while, but not that long.
Okay. And is your issue with the of privacy with the existing deck or the extended deck?
Yes.
So it's with the existing deck?
And both, because the extending will then bring it closer and will bring more activity down towards my yard.
Well, the extended deck is more towards the Lukash. I'm looking at it. I see where your property line is. I'm just asking whether your problem is with the deck as it currently exists.
Well, see, what you don't see on the site plan is that this deck looks diagonally right at my patio, which is about 20 feet off my rear property line. So you don't really see that on this plan.
No,
and so
I know. I saw the sight line when I stood outside your house and I looked towards on Willow, towards Willow. When I was on Maple and I looked towards the back.
Okay, so that's the issue. And so really actually the arborvitae that's being proposed is sort of off the existing sight line, is off the important sight line. It's those 2 4-foot skip laurels that are really more on the sight line, because they diagonally are between the sight line of the proposed and existing deck and my patio. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I understand.
So yeah, there's just a general issue, and here you're taking a variance and extending it. You're taking a 17% variance that exists and creating a 27% variance. And there should be some mitigation as part of that.
But didn't the zoning board take care of that?
Yeah, if that's what you're going to do, because you are also, as I said to the ZBA, you're also setting a precedent for approving then other variances to this extent, not only in this neighborhood, but throughout the community, throughout the village of Irvington.
But Pat, that argument should have been made, or probably was made, at the ZBA, and they gave the variance.
It was, and
one
member
re-arguing the variance before our panel, I just don't think it's something that it's something that should be that's viable, or some word that it's just not applicable, because that argument on the variance was appropriately before the ZBA, and the ZBA ruled on that variance. And I think Mike's question was if the existing deck was a problem, and John, if the tree that's sitting in the northwest corner is not, I'm sure you could move it a couple of feet to intercept the sight line between the deck and Pat's patio. John?
Yeah, usually, we assume that there's some variation in the location of the trees. I think the issue is not to do damage to the tree that's indicated as TR2, but we are showing the smaller shrubs in that area. Skip laurels are shade tolerant, semi-evergreen, and, you know, there are examples of them in that neighborhood that got quite big in full shade. It'll take longer to do that. The question is, do you put something with a big root ball? You know, we can move it closer if, you know, I'm pretty sure,
Well,
I
then you
would have to talk to the clients, but we could move it closer and you could do it
Then you-
and just be careful with the roots of number.
Yeah, then you get into my question about destroying existing roots. by
Right, right.
putting- which
Right.
I-
You know, the reason we showed the smaller shrubs more under the canopy is that they're more shade tolerant. There'd be less impact. They will grow high. You could let them go to 8 or 12 feet, but you know, that's a long time coming. The arborvitae was a quick, you know, quick height. It's a fast growing tree, less so when it's shaded, but it's still shade tolerant. And that's why we tried to put something bigger in that back corner.
The other half, Mike, of your question had to do with the patio and the privacy issue on the patio. If I remember correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, right. I was wondering, Pat, whether you had a privacy concern about the use of the patio area now.
Well, no, I think with the, well, the elevation is going to be slightly higher, but with if there were 1 or 2 arborvitaes that were of substantial height, like 6 to 8, well, supposedly this one that's being proposed on the plan is supposed to be 10 feet. I mean, if they're that high, then I think they will provide some screening. I mean, again, with the difference in the elevation, there is going to be some loss of privacy there. So there needs, that's why I was proposing the additional height to the fence. And Caesar, just to go back 1 second to your point about arguing the variance, I think it's important that the planning board be aware of those things, though, when potential variances come before the planning board, that they make recommendations to the, or comments to the ZBA so that they are aware that there are issues beyond just granting the variance, that there may be other issues that need to be taken into account that go throughout the community. And I think that was my whole point in making that point is, and I tried to say the vote on the ZBA was 4-1, and the one person who was opposed to it made the comment, you know, are we setting a precedent here? And I think that's what has to be looked at. Thanks.
John, can I ask you to do me a favor? John, would you put your mark on which tree you're talking about? Is it TRO2 or is it that thing up in the corner? Okay, wait, this is the arborvitae you're talking about?
This one here.
Wait, you're going down both spaces. Which one?
This is the
Okay, so
arborvitae.
the one in the northwest corner. Okay.
Right,
Okay,
that's
I got
AB1.
confused because you said TRO2 and that's not. Okay.
That's an existing tree. I was just talking about the root impact.
Okay. Then I got it.
Pat, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
I think Dan had a question for you. I forgot what it was, but Dan?
So Pat, you would say, obviously, you need more than one arborvitae planted in order to enhance your privacy?
Well, I think so, because as I said, the ship laurels that are being proposed, they're only 4 feet tall, so they won't even be as high as the fence that's being proposed. So they'll have no screening value whatsoever.
Okay, so
Well, that's their, just to be clear, that's their planted height. They do go quite high, but that's their planted height.
Right, but the deck is going to be built.
No,
and the
I understand that, Pat. I'm just saying, like, what we were trying to weigh by proposing those heights were the the root impacts versus, you know, we can't always, we could put those in larger and risk more root impacts. That's all I'm saying. I'm not arguing for or against. I'm just trying to clarify why those were there, so it wasn't indicated that they were intended to not have
Well,
any
then in
use.
that case, I'd just like to see something that's larger than that, tall, not larger, taller than that.
All right.
So the arborvitae plant or tree would have to be taller to your, like, not taller than 4 feet.
Well, the arborvitae is being proposed at 10 feet. If it's 10 feet from the ground to the tip, that's fine. If it's 10 feet from the bottom of the ball to the tip, I have some concern about that. That probably ends up being like a 7-foot tall arborvitae. So I want to see something from the ground up that would be 10 feet. And the same thing with the skip laurel, that it would be something more substantial than 4 feet. Again, because that just doesn't provide any kind of screening.
And in reference to the fencing, obviously the other neighbor wants a smaller fence, and as George mentioned, obviously, two different conflicting requests for fencing.
Well, look.
How would you, what would you say to that?
Look, if you gave me, if you provided more substantial screening, which I don't know if it's going to take, when I say screening, I mean landscaping. Again, I don't know if it's going to take there because it is so shaded in those backyards.
Mhm.
I've lost a number of spirea plants and barberry plants over the years because the trees have just shaded them all out.
Okay.
And there are no shrubs other than mine growing in the backyards here because of the heavy canopies of the trees. So I would like to see then more shrubs being planted here, more substantial shrubs. Hopefully they take, but again, as I said, I've spoken to both people at Rosedale Nursery and my landscape architect, and they both say, you need at least 4 hours of sun a day to get any kind of growth out of those plants.
So Caesar, I have a question.
Go ahead.
And it's really for us. Right now, we're discussing this for however long we have, because we're beholden to the idea that it's got to be a uniform fence height across the entire yard. Why can't it be of one height along the Lukash, and then for the 5-foot section for Pat's property, it's a foot higher?
Well, the foot high, they got to go back to the zoning board.
Forget whether they have to go back to zoning board, but that could be a solution, right?
Could be,
and
but Pat just said that.
Could I just say, ask Pat about that, because when that was suggested at the zoning board meeting, I think that wasn't acceptable. If I'm right, Pat, you said it needed to be 15 feet long.
Yes, you're right, Mary Ann. It really, if you're gonna just do it for like the 7 or 8 feet, that's my property. It really doesn't do anything. You might as well just go with it.
Okay. Then I have my answer. Then that's Pat, you want to extend that much higher fence along the property line of someone who doesn't want the higher fence.
Correct.
Right. You want to impose that higher fence requirement on the Lukashes.
Well, the
Right?
applicant
That's what you
wants a
wanna do.
variance, so that they should be protecting neighbors.
But yes or no, you want to impose that higher fence requirement on the Lukashes?
This isn't a court of law.
I'm just asking you the question.
I'm telling you, I want the 15 feet because that would give me the screening to my patio.
I understand. Pat, I understand, but your property line is only 5 feet or whatever. You want that higher fence across somebody else's property line.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Okay. I got
it. Hey, John, could you clarify the height of the tree? Pat was concerned, is it 10 feet from the bottom of the ball or 10 feet from elevation?
It's measured from the top of the ball to the top of the tree.
The top of the ball, which is essentially grade.
Yeah, great.
So a 10-foot tree would be 5 feet taller than the fence,
Correct, yes.
or 4 feet, which is a higher level than a 1 foot higher fence.
Correct.
I mean, 4 is better than 1. Basic engineering. Okay, I think we, Pat, you have anything else? Pat?
No, I don't think so. No, thanks.
All right, Sarah, you want to cut it off, and we'll, I think I got my opinion, but I'm gonna, what's the opinion?
Caesar, just a quick, so in other words, if he had to cover the Pat's fence, he would need 2 arborvitaes? I mean, arborvitaes like 3 or 4 feet in diameter when they reach maturity?
Yes, John?
I think one thing, if Pat is still on the line, we could up the size of the of
skip
this
laurel.
first, like the skip laurel that's most in the tree root area, you could leave that at 4 foot to limit tree impact, but then this second one, you could increase that to a 6 foot skip laurel. So then at least it's starting at the height, a little bit above the height of the proposed fence. And
Okay.
then, you get up to where he wants to be and without increasing tree impacts.
Okay.
Great.
That's good.
See, I would rather that the arborvitae be in that location, John. Because
so why don't
that is that sight line, that's the sight line from the proposed and the existing deck to my backyard, not where the arborvitae is being proposed
Okay.
right now.
So if we just leave the count for the skip laurels as 2 and move the arborvitae forward, let me clear out this mess, sorry. If we move the arborvitae forward like this and leave
Switch
one of
the
the skip laurels forward and one of the skip laurels back, right? Because that's not really a sight line, but over time that'll fill in. That would be better.
Right, but it's at least a 6 foot skip laurel and a 10-foot arborvitae.
So like a 6 foot back here and then leave the 4 foot up in the tree area here. Is that all right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And you'll make those changes.
Yeah, those are very close to what's shown now. We basically would have, instead of 2 4 foot skip laurels, the only change is to make one a 6 foot.
And change the location, put one in the corner and move the arborvitae.
Right.
Okay, Dan, you have any other comment?
Not at this time, Caesar. Thank you.
Concentrate on the fence. What's your opinion on the fence? Is it go with the as proposed, which is not as proposed, which is the same, effectively the same height as the Natarelli fence, or higher than the Natarelli fence, or that the movement of the arborvitae suffices for not going higher than the Natarelli fence?
Well, if we had the arborvitae as well as the other plantings, I would think that would offset the need for Pat's change of the fence height, and that would sort of comply with the Lukacs request uniformly with the fence height, I believe.
Yes, okay. This time I'm going to get it right. Lori?
I have no more questions. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, are you okay with the proposed fence height and the movement of the arborvitae taking the place of a higher fence?
Yes, absolutely.
Mike, I think I know your answer, but go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Laurie.
George?
The change of the landscaping is great. That seems like everyone's happy with that. I do think that we should have the height of the new fence or the fence to be the same all the way across. So the applicant or the neighbor, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. It should go down 6 inches so it all lines up, because it's going to look weird where it's at one height, then it bumps up to the other height. So I would say make it consistent for his property and redo the landscaping so it works for Pat. And that way this family can go out their kitchen, go down the stairs and go play in the rear yard.
Play bocce in the backyard. Anyway.
Is there? Lukash has their hand up.
Okay, Sarah, you got another comment?
Yes, from Sylvia, Mr. Lukic.
Yeah, this is Justin again. And yeah, I think the proposed changes sound good. And I was just going to offer, I don't know if it's possible or if it would help, but I think a lot of the trees that shade the various properties are on our property. So if they can be trimmed in any way as to provide less shade so things grow more quickly, grow better, we're certainly open to that if it helps.
Good point. If the applicant is willing to entertain that, that's between you and your neighbor. Thank you for that thought. Okay, that's it.
Caesar, if you want, I've been keeping a track of all the conditions. If you want to do a resolution with those conditions.
You got it all written down?
I do.
Okay, why don't you read it and we'll see if the board wants to vote on it.
Okay, do you want me to read the whole thing first or just the conditions?
Read the whole thing. Stop. Would you
Okay,
have,
it's not that long. Whereas in February 2021, Sean and Carolyn Newhouse received site development plan approval to replace an existing deck with a screened porch at the rear of their house at 26 Willow Street, subject to receiving a rear yard setback variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And whereas during its proceedings before the ZBA, applicants consulted with the neighbor opposed to the screen porch and modified their proposal to substitute a new deck and patio for the screen porch. And on March 23rd, the ZBA granted variances for coverage and encroachment into the rear yard setback for the new deck and patio. In April 2021, applicants applied to the planning board for revised site development plan approval for a deck and patio and stormwater management system. Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memo dated April 5th listed several minor issues. The planning board held a public hearing on the application on April 7th. And whereas the proposed deck would not impact views of the Hudson River from neighboring properties, and whereas the type 2 action resolved that the planning board grants site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled New House Residence prepared by Ferguson Malone Architecture, subject to 1, complying with the Han memorandum dated April 5th, 2021. 2, subject to modifying the path of underground pumping in front of the house between the sump box and infiltrator to make a direct route and protect the roots of the trees on neighboring property. 3, subject to the proposed fence aligning with the fence to the north, but in no event shall it be higher than 5 feet. 4, move the arborvitae further south, and if the arborvitae fails, it must be replaced with an evergreen or semi-evergreen tree or shrub at a minimum height of 8 feet. And 5, move the northernmost skip laurel further north. Change the northernmost skip laurel to a 6-foot plant and move it further north.
yeah, good. I think you captured the essence of what we've been talking about.
Not worded as elegantly as my stuff usually is, but
Well, it carried the essence of what we're talking about, and that's important. At least
Okay.
it did to me.
yeah.
Do we have a motion to accept the resolution?
Motion.
So moved.
So moved.
Second, somebody?
I,
Second.
Can we, I'm gonna poll for a vote. Dan,
I approve of the resolution and designate Sarah to sign for me.
Lori,
I approve of the resolution and designate Sarah to sign on my behalf.
I approve of the motion and designate Sarah to sign on my behalf.
George,
Approve and designate Sarah to sign for me.
this is Caesar. I approve and designate Sarah to sign. Well, the wisdom of Solomon cut the baby in half, I guess was the old story. I guess we managed to muddle through this and hopefully everybody is happy. At least they're well informed, if not happy. Thank you, everybody, and we'll move on to the next application.
I think I've earned a demotion again, so I need to be demoted.
You should get demoted.
Thanks, Sarah.
No problem.
We're moving to number 6, which is 2021-16, 8 Shady Lane. Now, on 8 Shady Lane, I understand Mike Smith is going to recuse himself. Is that correct, Mike?
Correct.
And Lori Davidowitz will sit in for Mike on 8 Shady Lane.
Share screen. Yeah, hello, my name's Niall Kane. I'm the architect for Emily and Michael Ast. And if you bear with me a moment, I'll share my screen. Let's get some work. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
And hear me? I guess you can. Okay, from the beginning. So this is a project, we're proposing a stone terrace with an outdoor kitchen. There's a fire pit in the stone terrace and 2 pergola structures that are extended off of the existing house. This is the location right here. This is the shady lane. Comes up on the west side of the property. This is the survey, which you can see in more detail. This area here is a conservation easement, and you'll see we're proposing, there's actually a little bit of a stone terrace patio there now to the south, which we're going to remove. This is the back of the house, and this is essentially the area of the new terrace here. Actually, this on the back of the house here. We are going to remove this fir tree as part of the work. This is just the side, both side of the house. Again, the terrace would.
Excuse me, removing that tree is necessary for the work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, I had a question about that. If we remove a tree, is it required to put in a new tree? Is that a requirement from?
Not a bad idea.
Actually, it's something we were considering.
We favor that.
We favor it, but not required. Okay.
If it was an 8-inch tree, it's required.
Yeah, no, the tree is not that big. It's 6-7 inches. We'll double check, but it's
okay.
We'll check. Anyway, this is a view panning around from the west. This is the driveway looking out, and then we're going to work our way up around to the south to where the project is located. This further up southwest corner. There's an existing fence that is around the perimeter of the yard. This is looking up at the conservation area of the property.
Excuse me, that tree stump that's sitting there, is that yours?
No, this is actually in the village easement. The village took care of this, is my understanding. I don't know if Emily here or Michael, but they did. I know I was there the day they were cutting it down, actually.
Okay.
It was not their job. And then just panning again around, all the way around to the east side of the property, and then looking north along the east side of the property. This is the site plan, the proposed site plan. I'll zoom in here. There were some comments I got comments from Han Engineering, but just today, and they picked up the sort of the major ones very quickly. This is the proposed extensive the proposed patio here. There's a little proposed storage shed, and then some planting beds, which you'll see in more detail on the detail plan. This is the little tree that fir tree needs to be removed. And there was a comment on Han Engineering. This is existing drainage system, drainage structures here. They extend beyond the property. So we had located the infiltrators here, thinking that this is a precedent that was already set. But we, Han Engineering pointed out we'd need some special approval for that. So we've relocated them in this zone here. There was a question in Honda Engineering's comments why we're proposing these French drains. There's an existing issue in this part of the yard. It gets very soggy despite these big catch basins and this drain, which is the faint line here that's existing. So we're proposing a curtain drain and some French drains to alleviate this issue. So they have a dog that comes in the house with muddy feet, and kids too, for that matter. So we're trying to solve that problem. Needless to say,
where's that water going?
This water going? Oh, well, it's just it's a French drain system just to help the earth absorb more water. It's not going anywhere. All the drainage required for the terrace, of course, is going into these infiltrators.
Are they new?
These are proposed. These are proposed infiltrators to deal with our increased coverage.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have a French drain that's not going anywhere.
It's done just as a way to mitigate moisture that build up in the yard, to try to It's not a uncommon strategy. We could connect it to the infiltrators, but it doesn't, I'd rather not do that just because it's very hard to, this is water that's coming off of this, this conservation easement here, this slope rather.
Okay, go ahead.
What else? Sorry. So this is the enlarged plan. We have now included a planting schedule for the plants. There's, again, a storage area here. This zone here is a pergola structure with a shade that will provide them a nice dining area. There's an outdoor kitchen here, the cooktop and sink and a little refrigerator and so forth, and bar on this side. And there's a small pergola structure as well over this outdoor kitchen. Fire pit is here. And then just some steps leading. There's a slight grade change you can see from the steps, and I'll show you in a minute the elevation as well. Just over this, the length of the back of the house. So this is the rear elevation. You can see the slight grade change. We're raising this terrace, the stone terrace up. The original small stone terrace is directly on grade. We're going to raise it up just to make it a nicer relationship to the height of the kitchen dining room within the house to step out and be able to use the terrace. It just creates a nicer proportion as well with the pergolas as it relates to the height of the windows and so forth on the house. Some lighting on the posts, I'll show you in a minute, and they're directed down, so there's no, what's that term, off lighting to the sky or adjacent properties.
Dark sky.
Yeah, dark sky. And then we're also proposing some recessed lights in the planting area, which again, just extend the light outward on the sides as opposed to directly up. And again, the side elevation, you can see the eat-in kitchen, the little fire pit, and the pergola structures from the side. There's also going to be a little linear fireplace and an outdoor TV on this westernmost pergola here. And it's just details of what you've already seen, detail of the outdoor kitchen component with the bar and the pergola structure above. Oops, what did I do? More details, if you're interested, pretty straightforward. Really construction details. And then this I just threw in just because we did a little pergola structure in Ossining a while back, so it will be akin to this, not wood colored, but white, and just a little less ornamentation on the columns, just to give you a notion of the appearance of it. The stone, of course, will match the stone on the house in the shady laying project. This is just two cuts of the light fixtures. You can see this is the light is soft light that goes out from the sides of these recessed fixtures, which has a nice effect on the planting. And this is a fixture on the column with the light directing downward. And that's about it. There were, I guess I did go over some of the comments here that Con Engineering had. Doesn't appear to me that any tree that needs protection. I know that the, what's her name? Landscape woman said she drove by. There are a lot of trees on the opposite side of the fence adjacent to the road, but there really aren't any trees, unless she was talking about the fir tree, which we're going to cut down. But we'll certainly look into that and make sure that any plant, needless to say, any tree that needs protection will have protection. We have added the plant schedule, which is one of her comments. If you look on the site plan, we have indicated
Schedule that gives a specific species and so forth.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you want to go into that at this stage. No. Besides, you're all exhausted after that last application.
I hope we were very entertaining.
Yeah, I was thinking I could pick up all of Han's comments while I was waiting. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but
You were
yes,
doing the trees.
we have the the planting schedule here with all the specific plants. And then we relocated the infiltrators. That was one of their comments. The calculations I looked at again are correct. We are maxing out the coverage with this extensive stone terrace, but all the math seems to work for the coverage. It's up here in this corner.
I think what you want to say is that you're not exceeding the allowable coverage. Is that correct?
That is what I wanted to say. That is correct. Yeah. So there's no variance required. And this was not on the drawings that you had. I just didn't delineate the exact required setbacks, and we're within all of those setbacks, as is the existing house for that matter. And that's about it. Dark sky compliant. Yeah, I think that's.
There was a concern with the community storm system. Are you using a community storm system?
Well, we're providing our own infiltrators, but we're connecting the overflow to the existing drainage structure.
Which is what?
There's a drainage structure here, and then it continues down to the storm sewer as an overflow. We don't have to do that. I've often had it just come up into the yard. That if Hahn Engineering has an opines on that, we'll do whatever they feel is. But we have enough infiltrator capacity for our proposed coverage, so we're not proposing sending water directly into any kind of stormwater system. That is not.
Well, there is, from what we understand, there's a community stormwater system that others other than you use.
Yes, but again, we're providing infiltrators which will take care of our impervious service.
Caesar, this was modified from what was submitted. This is just, this he was kind of addressing, trying to get better.
This is different than what we saw at the meeting?
It's, yeah, he switched it around a little. Now, why don't you send that to me and then we'll take a look and.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to send all this to you. I just did it like 2 hours before, an hour before.
Yeah, no, we're supposed to review what we reviewed, what you submitted.
Well, I'm just moved this. It was here before. That's all. This is all exactly the same. I haven't changed.
So Doug, does this address that issue?
I have to take a closer look.
Okay.
Yep.
Because Ed
You're gonna have to.
had a concern there about the maintenance of Ed. Are you there?
Yeah. Now, can you just check to make sure it's been maintained and inspected as required?
This existing?
The existing system?
Yeah.
I think tying in at the existing drainage structure is fine. You know, just don't tie it, just bring it around that so it's just separate. And I think it's better for everybody. It's better for the owner and it's better for the neighborhood.
So you're saying as proposed here?
Pretty much. It's where you're dumping the overflow.
Yeah.
I'd like to just see it go right to the existing drainage structure and not to the dry well.
Right here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just not tie, just in case.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Doug, their own subsurface system, that's new since Monday. Is that not correct?
Yeah, they were adding volume to the original one, and it was in the right of way. He mentioned that before, that they pulled it back.
Yeah.
So we'll have to take a look. I want to see, like Ed said, also it should go downstream of the existing system, but I'd rather take a closer look rather than comment now.
He's on a better path.
Yeah, this was a bad idea too, because it could have just flooded the system. When I thought about it, despite the fact that it was outside of the property line, this is better.
Yeah. And Niall, you said that the French drains weren't connected. It's just essentially some type of storage.
It's just to allow the soil to become more pervious, and
And it's not connected though.
It's not connected.
Okay.
And I don't think it makes sense. It's just allowing more pervious material. As a way to mitigate this problem that they have when it rains. It's just
you're looking for this French drain to act as a little bit of a storage instead of puddling on top.
Yeah, there's yes, and all the
maybe get the volume of water below to a lower elevation of soil
Exactly.
to drain
And
a little
it's
bit.
acting just like an infiltrator tank. I mean, it's just allowing water to permeate through.
And this is to fix an existing muddy problem of,
Exactly.
not really part of the project.
No, in that respect, it's its own project, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Doug, you have any questions on that French drain?
No, that was it. I wasn't sure if it was connected, which it's I would think it's better that it's not, so you don't have water constantly going to the infiltration system downgrade. So
It's hard to quantify too in terms of the amount of water.
Yeah.
It's impossible to quantify.
Okay. Dan, you have any questions?
No questions, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin? Oh, yeah, Kevin.
Nothing to add to the list that's in Hans' memo and what's been discussed.
Laurie
I'm all good, thank you.
and George.
Keep going.
Okay, I don't have any further to add. So you'll come back with, so that Doug can look at the stormwater system in more detail.
Right, I
Because,
guess needs more time to look at it again, and then presumably should be good.
yeah, and make sure you fully look at the, Doug, you included Suzanne's latest comments. There's 4 of them.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm sorry, you weren't talking to me.
Yeah, Doug, they were in there, right?
Yeah, they're attached to the memo.
I have them.
The first question being that trees 8 inches and larger should be shown. So those comments.
But now, there's nothing, anything within this conservation area though doesn't, I mean, there's tons of trees in here. It doesn't have any impact on the project.
Okay, I agree with you.
Okay, so anything within the zone.
Well, we got to be careful with the roots when you put the French drain in. I mean, maybe there should be a note to hand dig that trench.
Okay, and also maybe I mean, you can double check if there's anything big, if they.
Yeah, I mean, maybe identify the larger trees. Maybe you're okay.
Just along the perimeter.
Yeah, don't overdo it. Just enough to show that you can either use a machine or dig it by hand so that we protect the trees in the conservation area.
Yeah.
If there are any impacted.
Right. I think it should be fine. I can always move it back a little bit too, for that matter.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And that goes for the stormwater system too. There may be trees adjacent to it. You got to dig down there too.
No, we're good. There's none. I mean, well, yeah, on the other side of the fence, there's.
Well,
but yeah, we'll check.
If there aren't any, it's good to articulate there aren't any.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
Okay. Can't believe we got one more to go. Thank you very much. That was very illuminating, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
We're moving along to number 7, 2021-15, 2 Ardsley Avenue East. Is this John again?
John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architecture, representing Beckman. Here's the screen.
Well, so far, lucky, John, I can't find my notes.
We have notes from Han. We can use those as a crutch if you want.
Well, before we start, I want to say something. And that is that you presented 2, oh, I know why it's folded back. Here we go. You presented two proposals. Do you mean for us to decide which one? You got to pick one.
Yeah,
And,
I think we.
And furthermore, John, I missed the second alternative as well as somebody else on the review team. So it wasn't obvious there were 2 proposals. So I really only reviewed one. So pick one that you want to proceed with.
Well, I think the intent was that there's a primary proposal, and sometimes when we're at this board, people, members sort of ask, "Did you look at any other alternatives?" So that's why that was included.
What's your primary?
The primary is the one that I think it's called. Is it called? Right, so the proposed architectural site plan is the primary, and then the one that is indicated as alternate was an alternate because we understand that the proposed primary, which the client wants to pursue, is a heavy lift for a few reasons. And
Well, there's one big reason. It's well into the Broadway buffer,
right.
and you would have a hard time over 3 or 4 meetings to convince us that that's okay.
Right, and I think that's why, you know, the client had a very clear preferred position where they wanted it. So that's what we're presenting. And
When you want to waste your time on it, because like I said, it's well within the 50-foot Broadway buffer.
right.
Your choice.
Right, I mean, we can look at it quickly. I think the goal there
Well, we
was
did
that
look
I
at it
think-
quickly. It's in the 50-foot
Yeah.
Broadway buffer. To go any
Right.
further than that, you gotta fix that before you go any further.
Right. Both proposals require variances for coverage and for setback conditions. So this house, the way it's fronted, if you're familiar with the house, is it's fronted on Ardsley Avenue. So in one sense, this pool location is behind the house. There's a border on Broadway now that is very, very well screened, like unusually well screened. So if you looked at it just based on impact, you know, there's a chance that this location would have very little impact. We've added a little bit of screening indicated to the neighbor.
You're talking about the Broadway buffer one.
Yeah, the Broadway buffer one. So this is the
John, you got a long lift on this Broadway buffer.
Right. Right. So
you're not getting my drift.
Right. Okay. All right. So I said quickly, we'll move off of it. So, you know, the reason that we're proposing this is it has a similar kind of coverage impact to other options. And, you know, it does have some benefit to it because it is well screened with mature planting. I think, you know, the question for the ZBA would be, is that enough to overcome?
John, it's not a little bit, it's a significant intrusion on the 50-foot buffer.
Right. But the house is already extends into that also, but yes. So the alternate, if we want to jump to the alternate, then.
No, you want to jump, not me.
Okay. Okay.
We're not picking for you.
Right. So
we're just telling you, if you choose the Broadway buffer, you got a long haul.
Right.
And with not much success at the end of the rainbow.
Right. So the alternate position is located in it is like the side yard of the house based on its frontage, but it's actually the rear yard. And I think we had erroneously indicated the side yard, and Han has corrected that. So the pool is in the area of an existing patio. It is hidden within existing retaining walls, and there's some existing planting and fencing now in place. You know, we had assumed that we would take care of stormwater right here out in front of, and there's a lawn area to the front of the pool. So we thought there would be relatively simple stormwater approach that wouldn't conflict with other stormwater items. So again, this would still require some variances in order for it to move forward. But you know, if this is the rear yard, this one is at least technically in the rear yard of the house according to the pool code. I think because it has 2 fronts, it may still need a variance for that. Houses with 2 fronts, sometimes it's hard to confirm that it wouldn't also need a variance for its location separate from setbacks. And it's outside of the front yard indication here, but then also in this corner here where it does require setback limitations, you see that those setbacks are related to this part of the property that has to do with this driveway easement. So like in terms of an atypical condition, like the pool actually wouldn't be in the setback if the line was straight. So the fact that the setback bounces around that is what's putting that corner of the pool in the setback. So that's the special condition that sort of drove us to think that this was a more reasonable variance request.
But the stormwater system is not, you don't have it designed or placed.
We don't have it designed at this point. I mean, this proposal is based, clearly on variance requirements. So, I think in one sense, our goal would be to get to the ZBA. If you want us to develop a more complete stormwater system, we can do that. It's relatively simple, Caesar. It's, we would size it.
We would like to see that.
Okay.
And as long as you're talking coverage, what's the coverage issue with this particular location? Between the existing, between what's allowable, what's existing, and what's proposed.
Right. It's a very high number, the coverage. So what's happened with this neighborhood? It's a special neighborhood in the village because it's always been zoned as a let me just go to the neighborhood now. So it's been zoned as a 1 family 40, an acre zone, but the houses in the neighborhood typically developed with a max coverage of 4,800 square feet, which was the coverage that was allowed before there was a zone change for undersized lots. So before, I think 2003, the code treated, there was a bottom line coverage that you were allowed. So if you had a 4,000 square foot lot, you had 4,800 square feet. If you had 20,000 square foot lot, you had the same starting point, and then you had additional if you had a larger lot. When that was changed, that change effectively penalized or took coverage away from undersized lots. So in a lot of neighborhoods, the majority, if you were in a 1 family 40, the majority would be 40,000 square foot lots. In this neighborhood, the majority of the lots are half that size, and some are even smaller. So the neighborhood developed under that rule, under that initial rule of 4,800 square feet. So you'll see that the existing coverage in the neighborhood for most of the properties is, in some cases you're 300% of allowable, in other cases you're 250, but in general, everybody is solidly over. And the 178 that we're requesting, which would usually be something that we would not consider, makes more sense within this context. It's similar to something that we had in front of you for Field Point, where the entire neighborhood at Field Point is zoned at 1 family 40, and basically in 2003 all of the coverage was reduced, but the development pattern was based on the earlier coverage number. So in that sense, we think the proposed development is consistent with what's there and wouldn't affect character.
Well, give us the numbers. I think, Doug, someone calculated that the existing is 78% over allowable. And
no, that's the proposed. The existing is 70 or 69% over allowed. The proposed would be 178. So it's an increase of about 200 square feet. So there is some increase. You're going from basically 4,200 to 4,400. So it's a relatively small increase, but it's still a very large variance. But then if you look at the percentage of allowed for the rest of the properties, right, you'll see that most of them are already in those higher ranges, right, with a few very high.
Now maybe we should do a comparison chart.
Okay. So
I have some more questions.
Sure.
What was I doing here? Since I missed it, and a couple of other people on our review side missed the alternative we're discussing, would you know if the neighbor to the east is aware of the second alternative? Perhaps they didn't notice it like I did and chose not to comment because of the other location that was more obvious.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we can, I can go back to the client based on your initial reaction in this meeting, and we can resubmit so that it's clear that there's only a single proposal, and that should correct that, I suppose.
Well, if you can get a letter from the neighbor that they're aware of this thing, because they may have missed it in initial notification.
Right. Okay.
Just to note that, yeah, we know about it. And we have an engineering question. Go to your pool location. go to your site plan.
Yep.
The pool is what, sunk in a lower portion of the property, segregated by retaining walls. Is that correct?
Right.
How high are those retaining walls?
Let's see if I have a top of wall here. I think in the back corner here, they might be about 4 feet. One in the back.
So you got a 4-foot retaining wall.
Right.
And how far is the pool excavation going to be from the 4-foot retaining wall?
Well, we positioned the shallow end by the 4-foot retaining wall for the reason that you're saying. It's like, so in order to try to limit that. But yeah, it's probably maybe 8 feet from that.
And you're going to need to do some engineering. That digging the pool is not going to collapse the wall.
Right. I mean, I think, you would look to see whether you had sufficient slope to not do it in a case that you did, you'd
You're
have
correct.
to underpin the wall.
That's exactly what you need to do.
Right,
So-
right.
Okay. All right, let me ask the board. Dan,
No questions at this time, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin,
One question, under the alternate,
you
where
gotta
would
say which one you're talking about?
the one with the pool away from, on the opposite side of the house from Broadway?
One we're looking at now.
Correct. John, where would the pool equipment be located?
Oh, I'm glad
It's
you
shown,
asked that.
it's shown right up here, Kevin, in this area here. I can highlight it for you. Hold on a second. It's right in this area.
Okay.
Does the pool equipment need a variance? Is it too close to the property next door to the east?
That's actually entirely within the setbacks.
The
Both
pool
the pool
equipment.
setback and the house setback.
Just make sure with that bump out and the relabeling the side yard setback to rear yard, that answer is correct.
Right, so
It
no,
might
I
be.
mean, the
The
pool
house
equipment, I think.
the house had a rear yard setback variance.
Okay, oh, I see what you're saying, because if we,
Right.
so
it's
should
just-
this
I
line
mean,
all be treated? Should this line all be treated as side yard and then this be the rear yard, or?
That is, remember, every corner lot has to have a rear yard. You can't have.
Right,
So that would be the rear yard, and that's what it was originally approved as.
okay. So this rear yard will offset that into the 50-foot, and then that will cut into this, but I think we
Right.
would treat.
So it might cut into it.
Okay, all right.
Now, the issue with the pool equipment is obviously noise to the neighbor. So whether it's in the setback or not, there still might be a noise issue. So we had some other applications where there were pool equipment had to be some soundproofing. So
Right.
think about that, please.
This is a relatively good site, a site relative to the existing house, because it would be blocked by, there's a blank wall of the building here, so the noise would be directed the other way. So I think it's probably pretty good on noise, but we can look at that.
Yes, please. That was a good point there, Kevin. I meant to ask about the pool equipment and forgot. Thank you. Mike?
So can we just pull back and see the this again? This drawing again? I'm a little, so the front of the house is, the steps on the front of the house are at the,
Yeah, this is really considered the front yard.
I
I
understand.
mean, it's not considered, but yeah.
What I understand is, at the top of the drawing, the north part of the drawing, that's where Ardsley Avenue East is,
Correct.
right? And so facing the house, you're proposing that the pool be put on the left.
Correct.
And the left, and there's currently, if I'm not mistaken, there's sort of a patio area where they want to put the pool.
Correct.
But there's absolutely nothing between Ardsley Avenue East and where the retaining wall is in the rear, right? That's all open land,
Right, right.
right? So right now it's as if it's just a yard and they want to put a pool here with, I assume, fencing around it.
There's a metal fence that's protecting the yard right now. That is, let me see if it's visible here. Yeah, it is. It goes to the property line. So there's a metal fence now that's doing this, and it is planted with shrubs. And there's a gate, I think, somewhere in this area.
Okay.
That's already planted and screened. And right now there's an existing patio doing this. So the
Right.
patio is shown pulled out and replaced with the pool,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Okay,
Right.
right, okay.
You know, Mike, now that you asked that, is there any screening proposed between Ardsley East and the pool? Or is there?
There's nothing, we didn't show any planting in this submission because we wanted to do what we're doing now. But there is existing planting that is smaller, it's not trees, shrubs that are not showing up on our survey that we can document here, and then we will supplement that if necessary to provide more screening.
I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
And the pool fence, Ed, are we okay with the pool fence, or we don't know what the pool fence looks like?
There's none shown on the plans. I'm also worried that the one they have there might not meet the requirement.
Yeah, it would have to be upgraded to meet pool requirements.
That's what I thought. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. George?
So John, you're treating South Broadway as your front, is that correct?
Both are fronts, but I guess the rear yard was determined to be opposite South Broadway as opposed to opposite Ardsley.
Okay.
So you have a side back here, a rear here, and then two fronts.
So you're trying to comply so that your pool is in the rear yard as opposed to in another yard.
Right.
Right. Okay. I don't really have any comments other than it looks real tight, but.
Right. It's tight.
It is.
Okay. Sarah, any public out there?
The homeowner would like to speak.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for.
Did you give
staying
your name?
extra-
Your
Oh,
name,
yes.
please?
Beata Keckman, and I'm joined with my husband, Igor Greenberg.
Hey, good evening.
And your address is 2 Ardsley Road.
2 Ardsley Avenue East, yes. Thank you so much for staying over. We understand that this usually ends at 10, so really appreciate the diligence and really staying over for us.
Well,
Just wanted to clarify.
we're sorry you had to wait so long until 10:30 to hear this, so.
That's okay. It's in
Goes
our best
both ways.
interest. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. The first is that the fence actually does meet the pool code. We clarified that before this meeting. And so if you need the actual details, we're happy to provide those. And then in terms of the screening around the fence, those are actually green giants, which are currently at about 9 to 10 feet high. So they are very well, and they go all around the fence. So from the side of the front yard, as well as on the Ardsley Avenue East, it is very well screened that no one would be able to see inwards. So that just answers the second point.
That's well and good. That's very nice that it exists, but it needs to be shown on the plan. So,
yes, absolutely.
So that is part of what's there is part of the approval. I appreciate that. Sounds good, but it needs to be shown.
Yes, understood. Thank you, Caesar.
Anything else?
And the fact that we really try to thoughtfully construct this plan and try to, make it a smaller pool just for the kids to enjoy themselves, especially in this tough time of COVID where, no one is really going anywhere. And trying to give up the patio as well, to make that hopefully happen.
Okay, you're gonna have to go to the ZBA eventually, not now, because you need at a minimum a coverage variance and a setback variance because of the way the property line lines up with the pool. The little corner of the adjacent property creates a setback issue. Okay, so I think, John, the stuff we talked about is doable. It's up to you to make it doable. And
Yep.
we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you for talking to us on your house. All right, everybody, it's 10:30. This has to be, in my experience, the longest we worked. And for all us volunteers, all the extra money that we earned here tonight is going to go well. Thank you for your endurance. And Sarah, thank you for your endurance on pushing the levers that allowed people to speak back and forth. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Sarah, I'm gonna have a resolution for you tomorrow on Newhouse and a revised one on one of the others. So don't go final with them. It won't be till the afternoon because I have some morning meetings.
Okay.
Sarah, okay?
Yep, okay.
Or any other detail? Any other wrap-up information?
No, it's good.
I think we really talked out that Willow.
We're still public, Caesar.
We're still, Caesar, we're live.
We're still live. Yes,
All right.
So I'm gonna end the meeting.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
I'm just congratulating everybody that endured tonight. And I thought we handled some difficult situations very well and came out with something that we can live with and the people who were involved can live with. So praise to all. Thank you. Have a
All
good
right,
night.
Good job, Caesar.